London, right? It's in London, so he got COVID. So
Okay. So, welcome back, everybody. Hope you all had a nice Subway sandwich break. Hope you enjoyed the not so tuna and honey oat wheat. That's how we do it. So, we had a very short 4-hour break, and since then, a whole bunch of hot headlines have popped up. We're going to be here for a minute, so we'll get into those in just a second. But before we do, I noticed I don't know what's going on, but there's a whole bunch of new people that we've not seen before raising their hands. And so for the 5 folks that have your hands up, we will get to you in a minute. Welcome, by the way. You finally found the best room in Clubhouse. You did it. You found it. You found us. And we're glad you found us. And we're glad you're here. You did it.
welcome.
You
to
found
Tech News around the world.
You found the best room in Clubhouse. We meet twice a day, every day. Click the title of the room to see the schedule. And we have deep dive rooms in between those 2 meetings every day. And we've been meeting twice a day, every day since about April, March, something like that. And it's a lot of fun. And everyone on stage, well, actually, no, this is my point, is we got a whole bunch of new people that were raising their hands. This is really weird. This is normally we have 30 people. All of our other friends will show up in a minute, and we'll have 30 people on stage, as we always do. And it's always, generally the same usual friendly faces every time. However, for some strange reason, I would love to know the answer to, we had Saudamini Kumar raised her hand. Welcome. And then we had Andy in the audience, and Cheryl said bring you up. And then Saidi, and then so 3 newbies on stage, which is very unusual. And then we've got 6 more potential new friends in the audience with their hands up, who we will get to in a minute. But we got to go step by step, because we are a very tight-knit group of people on stage and in the audience. And so we want to get to know each of you all kind of one by one, if you don't mind. So let's start with Saudamini Kumar. Give us a quick little intro.
Hi, Tyler. I'm actually not new to your room. I've been in the listening lounge for a month now.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and that's what encouraged me to hop onto stage, because I suddenly started feeling like I'm part of your family.
Well, that's very
and
nice.
my evenings and my mornings were incomplete without I heard your sweet voice telling me all the crisp bites of everything. It's like a crash course on what's going on around the world. So it was, there was a day I think you started a little late and I was getting edgy. I said, why isn't he getting on to the topic?
I remember about a week ago. I remember.
Yes, I was in the listening lounge and I was like, why is he wasting my time?
Okay.
So the introduction follows.
Yeah.
My name is Saudamini. I'm also fondly known as Soda on Clubhouse. I'm a Clubhouse junkie, and I've been hopping rooms. And this is the only room that I have been regular in, irrespective of me being on stage or in the audience. And I'm from India. So you run this room twice, which is 11 a.m. my time and 7:30 p.m. my time.
Yes.
So I once listened to it when I'm in office, and once I listen to it when I'm back home. So right now I'm back home from a lovely productive Tuesday. I'm a human resources professional.
Nice.
I work for India's largest public service broadcaster. So basically what BBC is to the UK.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I work for that organization for India. So I'm attached with the government sector currently. I have 18 years of corporate HR experience. I've worked across industries and geographies. I have HR experience in South Asia and ASEAN countries, as well as many Indian organizations. So that's what I bring to the table today.
Nice.
I am a tech junkie as well. My first computer came to my house in 1995, which was a BBC computer, and I have been hooked and hooked. I literally made IT my career. So if that
I know the feeling.
Year 2000, like the brain drain, the slump didn't happen in year 2000, my parents would have made me a tech geek. I actually wanted to become a robotics engineer back in the days. So suddenly they're like, no, 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 study maths. So I'm a maths graduate. I'm also an MBA in HR. And I did my A levels in economics and mathematics. So that's what I am
There
with
you go.
education. And I have a artistic side as well. I'm an artist. So A level also had art and design as one of my subjects, which I got an Ace in. So I have two sides to me. Creative, my left and right brain both work basically.
So when we play Tech News Jeopardy, you are a force to be reckoned with. It sounds like you've got a lot of bases
Well,
covered.
I don't know because I like Game of Thrones and I like Disney. So it's two sides of me.
you have
Please
a
bring
great
us
laugh
breaking
as well.
news.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Please
you.
bring
And
us
I am
breaking
a
news from
biggest fan of
India.
yours, Tyler. I was tweeting this morning. First, I thought I'll unmute and share the news. And I said, no, who would better say it than Tyler himself? So I
Okay.
just tweeted the news and I let you say it.
So Cheryl, did I just hear you say Vinay has breaking news from India?
No, I say, please, I'm looking forward to, we are looking forward to breaking news from
Oh
India
yeah,
from
I just
Oh,
pinged.
yes, definitely. In the human resources space, as well as because I have multi industry experience, I'm
Yeah,
always the first one to hop onto the internet and look at news. So I will be contributing a lot because
great.
now I know the flow of this room for the last 1 month.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
I,
I'm glad you're here because Vinay. It was fun. I'm like,
Yeah,
Monica
Vinay is
used to
late for
bring us
I
us.
know Vinay.
all.
He's
Yeah,
from
yeah,
South India. He's
yeah.
from Bangalore. He's
Vinay.
also an ex HR person,
Yeah,
but he is now an entrepreneur. I'm still
yeah,
in the corporate world, and I'm
yeah.
still
Well, you're
work. I'm in the capital city. I'm in New Delhi.
yeah, but like Monica and Vinay have set a very high bar for our contributors from India. I'm really
India.
honestly, Monica and Vinay are just really impressive individuals, and so no pressure.
Let me surprise you.
Woohoo! Looking
Oh, the
forward to
Challenge
that.
competition
accepted.
is on. I love it.
Challenge.
More
Okay,
to the female power here.
okay,
With that said, I'm done speaking.
awesome.
Thank you.
And then let's welcome Andy. And I guess how did you know Andy, Cheryl?
I met him in Tokyo
Mm.
when he was here for a business trip.
Oh, nice.
He invited me to Google pantry for lunch.
Oh, nice.
That's
We
when I
we
knew
we
that
went
the
we
Google.
went on a hike. I don't know if you want to share how we met, but we did not know
You
each
can skip
other
that. You can
before
skip
that trip.
that. Yeah, but I brought him to Kamakura.
Oh,
We
nice.
had a great hike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because I
then
was
he
about to
brought
say
me.
where, because hiking and Tokyo, those two words don't really go together. But if you go down to Kamakura, then you could. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he brought me to the Roppongi Hills to the Google
Office.
office.
Yeah, I used
We
to live.
almost get stuck.
Yeah.
We got stuck inside because he was trying to do something funny.
Okay.
Well,
I
I
used,
didn't have the right key card. It
oh,
later turned out, but yeah, we kind of got stuck in between floors and had to go down the long way.
because there's a Google office right near Shibuya Station, like just in the back of Shibuya Station, and then I guess
That's the new one, I believe.
yeah, and then there's makes sense they have one in Roppongi Hills as well. Yeah, because you have Yahoo over there still in the Tokyo Tower across the street.
Yep, that's the original Google office, and I think they're going to try to move most of the people out if they can get everybody down to the new Shibuya location. But
Mm-hmm.
as things usually go with Google, they end up needing both facilities, and
Sure.
then they have to go build another one.
Yep. And then if I understand correctly, the Google Maps AR cool new stuff that they're adding is kind of being driven from the Tokyo team.
You know, I know the Android team really well there because they do a lot of the international development out of there. I don't know a lot of the Maps folks that are based there.
Okay. Well, it's a high. I guess because they're doing AR on Maps. I guess it's a bit of a mix of AR and Map team together. So good to have you. And are you living in Tokyo or you were just visiting?
Oh no, I was just visiting. I live in London.
Oh, okay.
And I've been in London since 2018, and former soon to be former American. I'm waiting for the embassy to open up to finalize that. But
Are you resigning your passport, American passport?
Yes, that
wow.
is the plan.
Wow, that's quite a rare thing.
Wow.
Is that because of FATCA?
Well, that's one of many things motivating me. It's a long, complicated story that I won't bore you with, but it just makes more sense at this point. And I've got my global talent visa taken care of here in the UK, and I'll get indefinite leave to remain in another year, and then I can get my UK citizenship taken care of, and so it's all on track.
Okay. Well, welcome. And then lastly, so we've got three. We've normally never do this because normally it's just all regular folks. So the other newbie today was Saeed. So welcome, Saeed.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tyler. My name is Saeed. I'm happy that you pronounced my name correctly. Saeed means happy in Tunisian. I'm originally from Tunisia, but for the last 14 years, I'm living in Dubai. I'm working in a company called Perform IT. We are a global Cisco AppDynamics partner. We do application performance monitoring. I don't know what people, if some of you here knows about APM technology, application performance monitoring. I will be happy to discuss about it and tell you what we do exactly. Of course, I'm not promoting the company here, but it's a technology like that everyone is benefiting out of its dashboards, but usually people don't know about it. I'm here to share some news about tech related to the field that I work in, and also to listen to you and know a lot of things from you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're gonna run through the most popular headlines as fast as we can. It normally takes us a minute, but and then when we get through the big headlines, then we're going to pause and get into the interesting headlines, because the big ones is what everyone's talking about. And in fact, we rank them. I have this handy dandy tool that shows me the most shared links that people are sharing, tech headlines that people are sharing on Twitter. And once we go through the big headlines that the people are sharing, those are not the most interesting. Typically, the more interesting ones we get into right after the big ones. So the first big headline is from Wired that researchers find more than 1,000 web apps from Ford and American Airlines and others mistakenly exposed 38 million records stored on Microsoft's Power Apps service. Misconfigured Power Apps from Microsoft led to more than 1,000 web apps accessible to anyone who found them. And that's the biggest headline at the moment. So the next one is from The Verge that Instagram says it's retiring the swipe up link feature, where some accounts would tell you swipe up for more information, which was a kind of a version of clicking a link. It takes you to another page, and they're retiring that feature, which allows users to visit external links by swiping up in favor of a tappable stickers starting August 30th. Okay, number 3. Bloomberg says they have sources that Apple's Tim Cook and Microsoft's Satya Nadella plan to attend a meeting with Joe Biden tomorrow to discuss efforts by private companies to improve cybersecurity. And that might have something to do with the most popular headline, which is that Microsoft again has a cybersecurity issues, and or it might have something to do with the headline 48 hours ago that the State Department was again hacked. Or it might have something to do with, as Chris pointed out, or somebody, no, it was Renjens rather, that the whole identity verification of the social web, that we can see little breadcrumbs, a lot of little interesting little indicators that give us reason to believe that in the not so distant future, we might be apps might be requiring us to log in with our verified identities. And maybe Biden's going to bring that up too. We'll see. Hopefully there's a follow-up afterwards so we can understand what they discussed. But what's interesting is this appears to have come out of nowhere rather spontaneously, and also in very short order. They're meeting tomorrow. And these are two of the busiest people on the planet, both expected to show up at the same time, kind of like drop whatever you're doing-ish, seems rather urgent. So I imagine it has something to do with the hacking of the State Department yesterday and why, how to make things more secure. So we'll see. The next one is from Engadget that the Poly network, which was the network that got hacked for $611 million worth of cryptocurrencies last week. Poly Network says it has now recovered all of the 610 million in cryptocurrencies it lost to a hacker and is in the process of returning them to their rightful owners. One of the most unusual cryptocurrency heists in recent memory has come to a close. The next is from CNBC that after criticism, a consortium founded by Coinbase and Circle, which is called Center, says it will exclusively back the USDC stablecoin reserves with cash in U.S. treasuries. Digital currency company Circle says it's changing the makeup of its dollar-pegged stablecoin USD coin to just cash in U.S. treasuries. Thank God for that. So the next is about the fact that Substack begins accepting Bitcoin as a payment for subscriptions on Substack. And that's really not that noteworthy. I'm getting frankly quite tired of who's accepting Bitcoin now. I guess that's a great problem to have. It's kind of becoming more and more meaningless. The only who's left that really matters other than Amazon at this point?
Subway
sandwiches. Great answer. Well, is there another one perhaps? But you can use there are Visa and MasterCard kind of coin linked cards now so that you can purchase at Subway, right? So
Exactly. So why would
Walmart.
you want to pay all the extra fees when you can use those cards and the transaction fees are considerably lower?
Yeah, so I'm just curious which company adoption.
Walmart. Imagine Walmart.
I'm trying to think. Other than Amazon, there's nobody that honestly would excite me at this point. If they added it to Apple Pay somehow, like natively, if Apple's wallet held Bitcoin natively, or if Google Wallet held it natively, PayPal already does, Venmo does, Square's app does. I guess we'll see. The big one will be there's two possible things. One is Facebook is saying they're going to launch they're relaunching essentially their digital currency situation. It started over a year ago with what they called Libra, sorry. And they had a whole bunch of great partners lined up. But unfortunately, that happened to correspond with around the same time as Cambridge Analytica, and everyone was worried that Facebook is not trustworthy. And they seem to struggle with proving to be trustworthy with consumers. So people don't trust them in the same way that they do a bank. I mean, they feel the opposite about Facebook as they do with a bank around privacy and data and whatnot. So Libra kind of didn't really get much lift off. It was kind of crash and burn. And then they went back to the drawing board because it's too big of a scenario to just hand over to everybody else. And now they have they've kind of rebranded it as Diem and a wallet called Novi. And we know from our friend Michelle, who joins us nearly every day in the other time zone when we meet, that they've been testing the digital wallet called Novi in Israel and Africa. And that makes all the sense in the world that they would test it in Africa where they need mobile banking solutions over there with low fees because they have mobile payment, but they have very high fees. And the telecoms kind of run that whole racket over there. And this could be in a way, a really interesting move for Facebook to become a payments layer in Africa, or a way for people to exchange value. And the question is, would they use their own Diem coin? They've said, if not, that they could work with central bank digital currencies. And I wonder if they could work with actual legitimate Bitcoin. That could be super interesting because that appears to be what Twitter's going to do. Jack seems rather obvious in his tweets lately that he's planning to make Twitter partner with the Square Cash App wallet, which accepts Bitcoin, and using Lightning Network on Bitcoin to enable the transaction of Bitcoin as sort of a currency for the internet, as he refers to it in his tweets. So that would be amazing if that became interoperable with the Facebook wallet, which also worked with Bitcoin on Lightning. And then, holy cow, if you've got two of the biggest social networks taking a similar approach, that could get really interesting really quickly. Anywho, I'm just fantasizing at this point, I think. But the next one,
Tyler,
yes.
Tyler, a quick point here. Why not use a stable coin as a currency than Bitcoin? It's a crypto.
The question is which one? I mean,
USDC.
Yeah, of course, I would say USDC as well, and and America might flex and be like, "Hey, you're American companies, you don't have a choice. We're going to do USDC. How's that sound for everybody? Nice meeting. Thank you very much for joining us." Yeah, I can see the US doing that. That would be super interesting. And then the question is the Chinese social apps, when they add a currency, will they add the Chinese digital currency into those apps? Because, by the way, the first interesting headline that nobody else the journalists haven't really figured this out yet. It was actually somebody who DM'd me this fantastic article. TikTok just announced very recently they're going big with Shopify to bring Shopify into TikTok. So here it is. I'm tweeting it out right now to the Tech News Twitter account, and thank you to Mark Di Stefano or whoever it was who sent this in. I think it was Corey Segal, was it? No, who was it? Somebody sent this in a bit ago. It says Shopify to power new in-app shopping experiences in TikTok for the first time. Shopify merchants across the UK will be able to sell to customers via their TikTok profiles. The extension of the partnership will bring new in-app shopping experiences to TikTok for the first time as Shopify continues to power the creator economy. August 24th. That's today. So, and then the first response to this was someone tweeted, "I wish I had invested more in Shopify." Yeah. So Shopify has just got them totally synced up with all of the social media platforms in terms of the ordering shopping cart aspect and connecting the sellers and the buyers and the merchants and the goods. But what is the currency there? If TikTok and Shopify did this in, USDC, that could be amazing. Anyway, so fantastic article that Shopify and TikTok, because now Shopify's got Google, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and I'm missing a few. So the next big headline is that Didi.
And then Tyler, just real quick, who hooked up with Shopify? Was it Stripe or Square?
Square. I'm sorry, Stripe. Stripe.
Shopify invested in Stripe too.
Yes, Shopify bought a whole $350 million worth of Stripe because Shopify itself uses Stripe for its settlement. And they knew whoever they chose, they would do such volume that the Stripe, a decent part of Stripe's transactions are probably fed via Shopify. And Stripe is both of those companies are just booming. Shopify is publicly traded. Stripe is not, and they're expected to at some point they're going to IPO. It's already worth over $100 billion. But because Shopify is one of the few known major shareholders of Stripe that you can publicly buy, because there are, VCs and things who have large amounts of Stripe shares as well. But you can't invest in those VCs. You can invest in Shopify. Shopify owns a lot of Stripe. So when you buy shares of Shopify, you're kind of buying shares in a bit of in Stripe as well. So the next biggest headline at the moment is that Reuters says that Didi has suspended plans to launch in the UK and Europe for at least a year amid a regulatory backlash in China over data privacy. And indeed, China's super smart about data, more than any other country, with perhaps, I would say even more than Sweden, honestly. I don't think any government actually appreciates the power of data more than China does. So kudos to China for understanding, being the first country to really understand the power of data. Like legit geeks, like they get it. Like they understand that shit is powerful. And so they're very controlling of it, and they use it to control people in China as well. And they're just, it's really wild to see how they handle it. So Didi's saying, you know what, we're going to have to scrap our plans to launch in UK and Europe because China doesn't want our data. It's going to be hard for Didi to go to operate in the UK, or especially in the EU, where the EU, all these countries now, the UK and the EU, are both going to say, oh, you want to do business here? That's great. Here's, set up your servers here in our list of pre-approved cloud providers. All the data is here. Hand us the keys. We have access to the data anytime. Got it? Sound good? We can audit the data anytime we like in our pre-approved list of cloud data providers. If otherwise, go find another country to do business in. And the UK and the EU will both do that. This is just becoming kind of India's already said this very clearly to MasterCard, most notably. MasterCard got shut down because they weren't complying on precisely this premise that I'm outlining here. India is telling MasterCard, put all of our Indian citizens' data must stay inside of India and cannot leave India. The data centers must be in India. Any transactions that involve Indians, the data must stay in India and not ever leave India. And MasterCard says, but that's crazy. You've got Indian citizens who go abroad to Dubai and they make purchases in Dubai. We're going to need access to that data in Dubai. And he says, nope, you keep that data in India. So this is just the new way. Governments beyond China are also understanding the importance and power of data, just like they understand the importance of money going in and out of their borders and people going in and out of their borders. Now they're very concerned about data going in and out of their borders. So that's where Didi is going to have a bit of trouble because the CCP doesn't want the UK and the EU to have that data. The China wants that data, and now you're going to start seeing a lot of this friction between governments and data. So anyway, the next one is that Google says it will make app ratings in the Play Store more personalized by localizing by the user's country starting in November, and by device type from early 2022. Ratings and reviews are important. They provide valuable quantitative and qualitative feedback on your users' reported data. And now we found out a few interesting reasons why they will do this. Number one, because, and credit to, who was that? John, who is kind of the global politics guy who joined us when we met 8 hours ago. He came up with two interesting reasons. One was that apps, Google tests stuff from time to time. And when they test stuff, they do it in New Zealand, for example. And when they're testing stuff, now it might make more sense that when people review this stuff that they're testing, these new features, that it only happened in New Zealand. They don't want those New Zealand reviews about new upcoming products and features to appear globally. They want to keep those reviews in New Zealand so that journalists in the US don't see these reviews about products that don't yet exist in the US and think like, what the hell is this product? I've never heard of that product. So that's an interesting example. There was a couple of
That's
other.
a nice side effect, but I think it's even more targeted to this problem of manufactured reviews, where
Sure.
it's much harder to manufacture reviews across large distances, many geographies,
Yeah.
many different device types, right?
Yeah.
This is going to shut a lot of that down.
Yeah. That was, I think, one of my initial points. And then, Cheryl, maybe you remember there was another interesting reason to do that, though it escapes me at the moment.
I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Not now.
That's okay. So the next one is that a UN-backed initiative called Tech Against Terrorism adds the Taliban to its list of terrorist organizations and will alert tech companies when the Taliban content is posted. So, for example, they might even contact Clubhouse when the Taliban creates a room in Clubhouse. The question is, how will they notify them? I guess they're asking for the emails to the correct into team members at each of these tech companies to let them know, hey, not only the Taliban, but now they've added the Taliban and other terrorist groups are active on your platform. And to which Twitter has already said, we don't care. We don't care who the person is. We care what they say. So in this instance, it's not really going to be that helpful to Twitter, because Twitter, when being asked about how they feel about the Taliban being on their platform, they say, we don't care what group they're from, if it's the Proud Boys or the KKK or whatever. If they violate our policies, it doesn't matter who it is. If you violate our policies, even if you're the president of the United States, if you violate the policies, you're out. If you don't violate the policies, you can stay, because people can change. Somebody from one group could eventually go to another. There's people who used to be Taliban members who no longer are, and there's people who aren't who now are. And it's the idea of putting people into corners. People identities are fluid. So, and the accounts on Twitter are for the individuals, ideally. Although that doesn't really address if it's a branded account, like the official Taliban account. Now that's kind of a different story. I wonder what they would do in that case. So, but like I've said before, I kind of like the clarity of their approach, which is, yeah, we have policies. If you agree to those policies, if you violate those policies, you're out. What you do out of Twitter, we don't have time to even worry about that. That's somebody else's concerns. So, but Facebook and WhatsApp and other platforms are being are a little concerned. I read that the spokesperson from Clubhouse said that they don't welcome the Taliban here, but yet the Taliban still seems to appear here. We had a report that they were here 48 hours ago in another room. So we'll see. And maybe this is helpful for platforms to know when terrorists are on their platforms. So the next one up is TikTok launches what they call the Effect Studio, which allows developers to build AR effects for use in TikTok. In private beta in select markets, including the US. Both Facebook and Snapchat offer tools that allow developers to build out augmented reality experiences and features for their own respective family of apps. And now TikTok is also getting into the AR game. What do you make of that, JT?
So they had AR capabilities inside their app, but it was really mostly internal. But now they're opening up the developer platform for creators to now start doing pretty much like what I do on the side, which is huge because we see companies like Instagram and Snapchat, they're copying what TikTok is doing, but now we see the reverse where TikTok is taking, the long vision approach of augmented reality technology being pivotal to immersive experiences and actual content creation that allows you to interact in a very, fun and creative way.
Yeah. So the next one, and there's no talk of TikTok doing any kind of AR glasses, but I guess it ultimately it won't so much matter. I think in the not so distant future, it's going to be really easy for TikTok, if they want to do AR glasses in a partnership with Ray-Ban or whatever. Like Ray-Ban will partner with anybody who wants to do them, and you just slap a camera on the front of the thing, and it's going to become commoditized, essentially. That would be my guess, that eventually we will see that. But the next big headline is from Bloomberg that a Nigerian mobile payment service called OPay raises $400 million, led by SoftBank and Sequoia. And this they now reached a $2 billion valuation, making it a new unicorn for Nigeria and for the continent of Africa. So congrats to everyone involved there. And then the next article is an in-depth look at the Solana blockchain project, which is now kind of one of the new darlings chains that the crypto community is now interested in. And the next article is that SpaceX says it has shipped 100,000 Starlink terminals to customers and has launched more than 1,700 satellites in total thus far. They plan to launch about 30,000 total, so they still have quite a ways to go. But basically, it's usable at this point with 1,700 satellites. And the users thus far seem to, including the ones who join us on stage here, like our friend Charles, speak very highly of it. They seem to already be having a pleasurable experience, and Elon says it'll only continue to get better. However, we're also seeing headlines yesterday that we're already starting to see several near collisions with these 1,700 Starlink satellites, and that's a very big concern indeed. And you've got 3 or 4 other companies wishing to compete and launch their satellite networks as well for covering the planet and internet coverability. So if Starlink is 30,000 satellites is their end goal, and you have 4 more of those, you're talking about more than 100,000 more satellites in the air, and we're already receiving reports of near collisions. It's getting a little concerning. So anyway, the next big article is that Visa says it acquired CryptoPunk number 7610, which is number 7,610 out of the 10,000 CryptoPunks that were originally minted, for a price of about $160,000. And simple as that. The first notable kind of company to participate in that kind of a way that we're aware of, even though Coca-Cola and everybody is getting into the NFT game of minting their own NFTs. This is an example of a company actually buying what is arguably the most important NFT project thus far, which is the original CryptoPunk.
This reminds me of Garbage Pail Kids for some reason.
It does me too, actually.
Like so much stuff from our childhood is now back.
What if they put the Garbage Pail Kids on the blockchain?
That we would go nuts. Like,
or better yet, explain it to
a millennial or a zennial, whatever we are.
Your Cabbage Patch dolls could be somehow magically put into the blockchain.
It's all about provenance.
You want Atom Bomb.
We haven't yet established authorities like the same way that, say, Christie's or Sotheby's can establish provenance for many other artifacts that are culturally significant. Until we get to the point where provenance is really clear, right, you're not going to be able to unlock all the potential value that's there. Now, obviously, if the company that holds the license to the brand is issuing it, and they're using a well-respected pathway to be able to establish that provenance, right? That's important. That's big news. But until we have those social constructs well established, where everybody knows this is how you validate it, right? We're still speculating about where NFTs can end up. Without that provenance, it's limited value.
Yeah. And then Jeremiah, you have a blog post soon coming up about NFTs, yes? Brand NFTs? I just invited Jeremiah up. And then there's Gary Vaynerchuk, launched what he called a NFT restaurant in the past 48 hours, which means he's using NFTs as a way to show membership to a private restaurant, essentially. And you can sell your membership, and the value of the membership is traded like any commodity, essentially. You can think of it like a coin.
Is the food edible from the restaurant?
I imagine it is.
This is like at Disneyland, there's Club 33. It costs a lot of money to buy a membership. You could probably NFT that at some point too.
I like the idea of a membership as a token that can increase in value or decrease in value. It's kind of an interesting concept in
We
think
need to
itself.
come up
Clubhouse
with a
should have a
Tyler coin
token.
for your island.
No, I think Clubhouse should have a coin.
I agree with you, Cheryl. I absolutely, and there is an ideal coin for it. And the Jeremiah knows quite a bit about this. There's a company called Rally.io. Rally is essentially making coins for that kind of purpose, for an app like Clubhouse and creators, the creator economy. Rally believes the creator economy will be based on coins. And it's a really compelling proposition. And in fact, Jeremiah has a coin. Evan, who joins us on stage regularly, he has his own Rally coin. So does Dr. Francine Hardaway, if I recall correctly. And Jeremiah's petitioning to have Tech News Around the World get its own coin. And here, I got to invite May up here and Dr. Francine Hardaway. And I could be wrong.
Hey there.
Yes. But the idea about Tech News Around the World having a coin, and it would give you access to our private DM channel, and you could earn coins by hosting rooms or making great comments or winning Tech News Jeopardy or whatever. Anyway,
And all that merchandise.
yeah, and all of the swag. We have coffee mugs and shirts and clocks and all that stuff, which you can see on our Twitter account. But I think far more interesting is exactly what you said, Cheryl. And I said this to Jeremiah, that if Clubhouse had its own coin that can change for actual real money, and that's what the Rally coins are, by the way. They are exchangeable. The Rally coins are on Coinbase. And in fact, Coinbase is a minor shareholder in Rally Coin. And by the way, Andreessen Horowitz, the biggest investor in Clubhouse, is also a notable investor in Rally. So
yeah, I'm just following Andreessen Horowitz around because they keep starting these sort of semi-connected that are connected to the blockchain, and I've been experimenting with it, and so far I've done very well. This is my strawberry. I minted it yesterday, and right after I minted mine, Gary Vee minted one, and then they all sold out.
there you go. So the idea of Clubhouse having a Clubhouse coin that people could earn through, again, hosting great rooms or making awesome comments or bringing in amazing celebrities into Clubhouse, or they could incentivize people all kinds of different ways. But these coins could actually have their own economy and increase in value. And Rally has
You could have that up and running today with BitCloud.
Yeah. There are comparisons to be made there. I mean, but there's obviously distinctions to be made as well. But
For me though, Tyler, this is really central to the three, the thesis I have, the three stacks I call them, right? The freedom stack, that's the wrong word. The dollar hegemon stack, the Belt and Road stack, and the DeFi stack. And so in the DeFi stack, I see a world where you are paying a coin to tweet. Your reach can be countered by paying. Like if you're an asshole, people can pay so that you don't have reach. It solves the identity verification issue. It probably stops a lot of this, behavior that is really just to instigate people. You come up with troll accounts just to push people's buttons because you're unafraid of saying things when it can't be traced back to you. I think that the coin is really going to unify communication if we jump onto that third track. And I'll shut up now.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, but why there has to be a token for everything? We can actually, if so many tokens, I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's like 2017 people coming up with ICOs for every kind of problem with some random paper without
Yeah,
anything in them.
it's why money was invented, right? We have different skills. We need to trade those. How do you establish value? If you're a one of a kind, designer or painter, essentially what you're doing can't be commoditized, and that's why you get such high rates for what you do. But if you're doing more commoditized type stuff, then it makes sense that you'd be that. So this is along the lines of the creators, right? Creators are doing something that no one else can do. So to have them take fiat currency brings us into commoditizing their talent, so to speak. So I'm really big on coins for the medical industry. I believe that medical should be one of those where the on ramps and off ramps are very controlled, so that you don't. I'm getting too far down the road, but basically, I think that the economy can be reshaped, and the discussions can be reshifted if you moved away from the standard currency model, which is basically a intermediary for our old school bartering.
There's another issue here, which directly answers that question of why should there be a coin for everything? It's because human attention and engagement is the most valuable thing on earth, and if you don't have a direct way to monetize that attention and engagement through coins, right? The use cases you gave were great, right? If I want to uh, give more of my attention and engagement to uh, producers who are giving real value, right? And I've got a means of buying their creator coin, right? I see this dynamic in BitCloud all the time, right? Then I have a way of doing that, and if other people feel the same way, then that coin increases in value. If I just want to go flip coins and I'm not really adding value, right? Then nobody's going to buy my coin.
Yeah, and but it automatically leads us to that question that all of these new coins, would they be sacrosanct? Would they follow the fundamental principle of money? And if not, then they are junk. And if they follow, then we already have Bitcoin or any other coin. So why not
It's
use
not about
those?
money, it's about value. And we've got to understand there are many different dimensions of value. Monetization is really the basest level of value, right? The coins uh, can allow you to create metrics for things that you value. Now, not all of those things need to be in the form that is directly monetizable, but if you've got ways, because the most valuable thing you have is your attention and engagement, if you have more and more ways of allowing metrics for that attention and engagement to say that this is what I value, this is what I don't value, right? That allows for leverage, and that's really, really important, especially if you're creating value or trying to support those who are.
Do you think, Andy? A lot of people talk about how in the future companies will issue their coins to people who want to participate as maybe in the paradigm that we've come to know, in modern history is, people are paid salaries in fiat currencies, but now we're starting to see examples of contributors collaborating and being compensated via coins connected to the projects. Might the opposite also happen, where you as a consultant are willing to work for some effort if they buy your coin? if they buy some X numbers of your coins, then you're willing to work for them. That's similar to
This is a really great
Tyler,
question.
Tyler,
yeah.
you just hit the $1 million question, and there is that use case of, can we NFT ourselves and our own services, which in essence makes us the person that could do all of the transactions ourselves. Like if someone wants to hire me as a consultant, I can NFT my work, I can NFT myself and my deliverables, which means what I could do, what I could add of value to a project, which in some ways is really fascinating because there is this already called proofofhumanity.id or proof of humanity, where you put in a certain amount of ETH to confirm via video and your Ethereum address that you are who you are. And actually, Vitalik Buterin and many other humans across the world have actually already started doing this, because at some point UBI is going to become a real thing. And when universal basic income steps in and becomes a real thing, most of these people that are jumping on in a proactive beginning stage and early adopters are going to be the ones that I think in the future are going to be the ones that'll probably be in a much more advantageous position because they've already experienced how to navigate it, how to deliver against it, how to value their work and their efforts and their services. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting going forward.
I want to pick up on Amy's point. So Tyler, on my personal creator coin on Rally, we have a menu of services every creator, and so people have been purchasing my time to join them as a speaker on a webinar or a podcast or even about already buy my coin for my services, and it's so easy to do versus having to deal with traditional procurement systems.
Yep. It's going to get really interesting rather quickly, I think. So the next, there's a couple of other the bigger headlines. Apple and Google now fight in Korea. The proposal in the South Korean legislature is in an early test of how forcefully. So I'm ruining this headline. Here it is. 1 second here. Apple and Google are calling on the White House to oppose a South Korean bill set to face a vote this week that would mandate multiple payment systems for app publishers. And this is from the New York Times. And the New York Times headline says, Apple and Google fight in Seoul tests Biden in Washington. A proposal in the South Korean legislature earlier in an early test of how forcefully the Biden administration will defend the companies abroad while trying to trim their home power. Essentially, South Korea wants to make it so that app developers can circumvent the app stores. That's it. They want their Korean app developers to be able to not have to be forced into the app stores. And Apple and Google are freaking out. And now, rather than try and go fight it on their own in Korea, because they'll lose that. Korea's already made up its mind. And so now they're asking Joe Biden, Uncle Joe, get in there, Joe. Help us out. So it's going to be very interesting to see if what Joe says and how Korea takes it. And if Korea doesn't kowtow to Uncle Joe and Apple or Google, which I'll be a little surprised if they do. And if they go as planned and this bill passes, and Korean apps or apps in Korea, I should say, don't have to go through the app stores, that could become a domino effect. India would likely do that very quickly. There's a prediction for you. I'll even open that one up to a bet. If the Korean one goes through, if the bill passes, I bet that in India will replicate this within 6 months. And then all of the Indian apps also get to keep a whole lot of money by not having to go through the iOS or Apple app stores. And then there will be a domino effect. You'll see UK apps. Well, the ones that aren't super, super, super cozy with America, like the UK. I'll bet you the EU will do it. Because the EU has for a long time been trying to figure out. And by the way, Spotify has been pushing on this issue for more than a hot minute. And they listen to Spotify. The EU does listen to Spotify on this point. So I think it's all coming to a head here. And it's likely that Apple and Google might lose their App Store duopoly of power on these issues. So, but we will see. It'll be super interesting to see what happens in Korea this week. So that's a really hot one. There's an article from Vice about Unity. The headline reads, Unity, and let me explain what Unity is before I read this headline so it makes a little more sense. Unity is one of the two big gaming engines that game developers use to make video games. Now, those game engines have gotten so good. Video games look really freaking good if you look at the latest titles that are all coming out in 2021. And you'll notice that the skin textures are freaking incredible, and they're really making worlds, which we're going to use in VR in the near future. And VR metaverse architects will also use these engines like Unity and Unreal. from Epic. And by the way, governments use them as well, including the armed forces, and they have for a decade. And so, all of the video games, a big percentage of the most popular video games were, war simulations. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And the military started to understand, well, wait a minute, we could make our own video game that's even more realistic for our own purposes, for training purposes, for simulators, for what to do in these types of scenarios with terrorists, or and before we actually go and fight, whoever, Taliban in Afghanistan, let's make an actual simulator in this video game like environment. Even better if we do it in VR, which, by the way, all of these platforms are the main platforms for building VR experiences now. So let's make a VR actual simulator for fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan here and train on the ground in the US before we get over there, so that we have less casualties, so that our servicemen and women don't die as much. That's the whole point, right? So, now that you understand what Unity is, it's a platform for developing video games. Initially, that's how it started, and it became much more. City planning, architects, you can build buildings. When you play a Grand Theft Auto, whoever designed that game essentially recreated all of Los Angeles inside of that video game on a block-by-block, stunningly accurate. If you live in Santa Monica, as I did for many years, holy shit, is that Santa Monica. They rebuilt Santa Monica in that goddamn game. I feel like I'm in Santa Monica when I play that game. So my point is, they could do the same.
And doing much the same activities, right, Tyler?
Say what?
And doing much the same activities.
Yeah.
It's hard to...
On my skateboard, yeah. But they could recreate Kabul. And now you understand how powerful this could be. They could do a block-by-block VR recreation of Kabul and have you go run in through Kabul on a block. You would already know Kabul before you even got there. Get it? Do you get it now? How important this would be to the military to do this? Good. Okay. Now, they've been working, as I said, with the military for a decade. Now, the headline from Vice is as follows. Let me read it. Unity workers, meaning people who work at Unity, question the company ethics as it expands from video games to war. Okay. They expanded 10 years ago into working in what they call GovTech in exactly the ways I'm describing. This obviously, the Department of Defense, when they saw these video games coming out a decade ago, like Call of Duty, obviously they thought to themselves, oh, we can use that. A decade ago, not last week. This is not a new thing at all. And Unity has not been shy about this at all. They've been wildly transparent about it on their public website for the public, let alone for their employees. Of course their employees know they're doing this. Even the public knows they're doing this. They're very public about this on their website that they do this. So, Unity workers question company ethics as it expands from video games to war. When? 10 years ago? How is this a headline in 2021? It says the lack of transparency around the game engine makers' GovTech work, which contracts with the Department of Defense, has concerned employees. Oh, really? Who? Well, the journalist here found a former employee who's a bit disgruntled and is now leaking information under the under the cloak of anonymity, and which is kind of a fair thing. We need that. Obviously, that's a very important aspect of journalism, is that you can have unnamed sources, and this unnamed source is not being named, has chosen to maintain anonymity, but they're also revealing things that they shouldn't be revealing as part of having worked there, because they signed confidentiality agreements. So this article, how big newspaper articles always have featured a sentence that they put in much bigger font. Just to give you a real quick, if you're only going to read one sentence, read this one. It's like the font is like 10 times bigger than all the other parts of the story. Here's the call out, breakout quote that they put in like 200-point font. whether or not I'm working directly for the government team, meaning the team that builds the government tech stuff, whether or not I'm working for the government team, I'm empowering the products they're selling. So even if I'm not working on GovTech and I'm not working on the solutions for the Department of Defense, even if I'm not on those teams, I'm still working for a company who sells products to them. Yeah, you are. You're working for Unity on a different team. You're working on the architecture team, the future of VR team, the video game team, whatever. Yes, they have hundreds of teams. One of the teams is working with the Department of Defense on their simulator development. Right. So whether or not I'm working directly with the government team, I'm empowering the products they're selling. Do you want to use your tools to catch bad guys? Maybe we shouldn't be in the business of defining who bad guys are, meaning who am I to say that we should be working on solutions that defeat ISIS? Who am I to say ISIS is bad? That's what this person is arguing. And then it gets a little even sillier, where there's a second call out section, and it says, I don't think most employees were warned that they would need a philosophy degree before accepting a position at Unity. So, no, you don't. You don't need a philosophy degree. You just need absolute common sense and just a tiny bit of responsibility and as soon as you realize that you made a mistake and worked at a company that does something that you're ethically feel challenged by, you absolutely have the right to resign. But they made no effort to hide the fact that they do this with governments. So Unity has responded to this article in a very lengthy response, where they say Unity's full response to this story is as follows. As we said in our S1 filing when we went public as a publicly traded company, when we grew out of the core belief that our real-time 3D tools have applications outside of gaming. Unity platform solves the toughest engineering and data challenges our customers can face in their respective industries. We know this because the use of Unity's real-time 3D platform is implemented in just about every production and manufacturing lifecycle in almost all industries in operation today, including the U.S. government and military. Again, they're basically saying we're used in every field you can think of. IKEA uses us. Everyone's using us, including the government. The use of Unity and real-time 3D in the government and aerospace industry, as well as the U.S. military, is not new to Unity or its stakeholders, meaning its investors and employees. This is not news at all to anybody, even the public. We've provided simulation and training, AI and machine learning, synthetic environment rendering, and more to these customers for some time. We've had a relationship with the Inter-Service Industry Training, Simulation, and Education Conference for over a decade, and we have active contracts with the United States Air Force, the U.S. Army, and defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Boeing, because they use it for building planes and all kinds of stuff. Confidentiality clauses for these engagements are very restrictive, similar to many of our partners' deals, including some of the work we do with gaming companies and in verticals such as retail. So while we can't share specific details, we can say that we have a thorough review process, and we have not, nor will we support programs where we knowingly violate principles or values. So if we knowingly discover that our platform is being used, in very illegal ways of committing genocide or ecocide or causing mass tragedies of some kind, if there's severe misuse that goes against our ethics, then of course we would pull the plug on that client who's using our product. But the military is in the job of being the military. The Department of Defense is in the job of defense. And how they use our platform is just to enhance what they have been doing since they were founded. They're not doing anything particularly new with our platform. But this disgruntled employee that is used as the essence of this article, who's a former employee who clearly has some kind of bone to pick with the company, seems conflicted that they were helping a company that worked with the Department of Defense. To which I say, well, by the way, this disgruntled employee themselves even goes so far as to say that most tech companies today in Silicon Valley in some way work with the military, which is true. And so this I get the sense that this person is a developer, and feels that, there's a quote where they said, they wanted to work on, things that improve the planet. Here it is. I came to Unity explicitly because I naively believed their marketing around empowering creators and making the world a better place, or whatever. I got into AI with the expectation that I'd be building technology for the greater good, or some nonsense like that. You learn pretty quick, though, that cozying up to warfare profiteers is the fastest way to make money pretty much universally in the tech industry, meaning lots of tech companies do it. Yes, they do. Lots of them, even really huge names. So whether or not I'm working directly with the government team, I'm empowering the products they're selling. So even if I'm not on the team building the product for the military, I'm still working for a company that does do that. Again, is their quote. I'm empowering the products they're selling. Do you want to use your tools? Maybe we shouldn't be in the business of defining who the bad guys are. So to that, I say, if you're that concerned about it, go work at, I don't know, some tech company that has nothing to do with the government.
Just do what everyone else during this pandemic did that has any guts, and just go take the jump and go do something you believe in. Like, instead of bitching about it, just go do something. Like, that's what so many people during the pandemic did.
So that's that article, and kudos to Unity for giving them an incredibly lengthy response. I just read the first 2 paragraphs out of about 15, by the way. And so that one had a lot of traction today. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Can you imagine Google had done this instead of kind of weaseling out of substantive engagement with Google employees over, I don't know. I saw the past 4 years of this where Google went from engaging their employees on these issues to basically obfuscating and, basically only dealing with surface issues and looking at it as a PR exercise, even internally.
It's a sticky situation, but
And Tyler, what was that company that prohibited any extra work discussion, political discussions outside of work? They
that
fired a bunch of their
Coinbase.
Basecamp.
But
Basecamp,
it was both, actually. First, it was Coinbase. Coinbase did it because of they were going to IPO. And Brian Armstrong, the CEO, knows they're planning to IPO. He hadn't really told the company yet, but he knows they're doing it. So, the senior leadership and key investors know they are, and they're bankers. But because they know they're going to IPO, they need to make sure nothing derails that IPO. So, to make sure there's nothing goes crazy, by the way, this part was never reported, but now in retrospect, it's common sense, because since in the months that follows, they did IPO when we covered that IPO. So around the time that they were really getting serious about IPOing, they made a decision to tell the team members, hey, we've got some news. We're no longer going to be talking about hot button political issues at work. By the way, this was also coincidentally around the times of the Black Lives Matter protests. And they said, listen, we have a real clear mission here at Coinbase. Our mission is to bring crypto to the world. That's our mission. We have a singular mission. Everything else is not our mission. And we're only going to succeed if we focus on our mission and ignore all the other missions, laudable missions, saving the dolphins in the rainforest, are not our mission. So if you want to talk about those things, you can do that on your own time outside of our buildings and outside of our email servers and outside of our chat servers and everything else. Inside of our building and inside of our email system and inside of our chat servers, we're focused on the mission of bringing crypto to the world. So please keep your conversations focused on our core mission. Thank you very much. By the way, if you're unhappy about, this focus that we're going to insist on, here's a very generous severance package. Have fun at your next job. Here's 7 months salary. It's been fun. Take care. That's what they did. New York Times freaks out, saying, how dare the Coinbase take this approach. This is so un-American. Employees are allowed to say whatever they want at work and da 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 da. Okay. No, actually, they don't. Companies can fire you for any reason at any time. That's also part of being an American. And that one trumps the other one. So, from in the American hierarchy of freedoms, the company's ability to fire you at will outranks your ability to say what you want at work. And Americans know this. So it was a dead issue. You're gone. If you don't want to play along, go find another place to work. Real simple. And here's a generous severance package. It's been nice. Bye bye. They left. Those employees who felt like they need to continue to talk about issues that are not related to the company on company time, on company equipment, took those severance packages and left. And then they were able to do their IPO without people derailing it. Rather brilliant move, honestly, that I think will be studied in business classes in years to come.
I'm studying it now because when you think about it, right, with and Jen's in the room, Jen Sanders in the room, with Sarbanes-Oxley, with the corporate compliance laws, you have some unrelated issue that's personnel related, and discovery opens everything up for you. Like all of a sudden, everything you were trying to protect can get brought out into the open because someone said something in an internal chat that was the subject of some kind of investigation or
Right.
deeper dive.
Now,
and that's where I think founders and everyone else should be paying attention.
Interesting to note that this became the press became aware of this not from Coinbase, but from the employees who were taking the severance packages and leaving and complaining as they're leaving because they want to be able to talk about other political issues at work that are not related to the company's core mission. So the press jumped on the story, understandably so. Interesting story. But Basecamp, DHH, and the team at Basecamp realized, oh my God, Coinbase just got a shit ton of press out of this. Holy cow, press. Like millions of dollars of free press for this. Huge. All the publications were all writing the story. The free marketing value that Coinbase got out of this was you can't buy that much free press. It's just millions and millions of dollars of free press. And the number of signups that Coinbase must have got in the weeks that followed those headlines must have been tremendous. So DHH is a smart dude at Basecamp. And so here comes Basecamp, 37 Signals, 2 weeks later, after the Coinbase brouhaha dies down, all of a sudden we see new headlines that 37 Signals, or Basecamp is their main product, the company's called 37 Signals, they announce, we're not going to allow political discussions at Basecamp either. Well, nobody asked you. Why are you announcing it to the press? That's not what Coinbase did. It was their employees who were leaving, taking their packages that went to the press. You are just trying to get free PR like Coinbase got. But you're doing it intentionally to get PR. That's why you're doing it. Well, you might not want political discussions at work, but if that's really what you wanted with no political discussions at work, well, just tell your employees and that's it. Don't go to the press and be like, hey, we want the free press too. So I don't blame 37 Signals for trying to ride the free press train and get a free $1 million worth of visibility for their products, but they're similar but different. So the other big interesting headlines at the moment are Virgin Hyperloop is back in the news. And it's Bloomberg made a video about it, and it says the Virgin Hyperloop is aiming to be the interstate highway system for the 21st century and beyond. And Bloomberg spoke with the CEO, which I just tweeted it out to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. So if you want to watch that video of that interview with that CEO, you have
Tyler?
Yes.
I don't know if I arrived late. Not sure if you covered the breaking news about the Havana syndrome.
About what? Havana syndrome. No, please tell us. Hold on. Hold. This breaking news, like legit breaking news?
Yeah, there was an attack on Kamala Harris.
Get out of here.
Singapore.
Oh my God, get out of here.
Yeah, flight delayed from Singapore 3 hours because of Havana syndrome. Anomalous health incident in Hanoi, and no real reporting about who was attacked or what or how exactly. But she's well, she's fine. But I guess Daily Mail's reporting this. I'm sure others will catch up. They tend
Holy
to
shit.
be first.
So this happened in Hanoi or in Singapore?
This
In
happened
Hanoi.
in the flight from Singapore was delayed 3 hours, but it was in Hanoi. So either
Oh,
her or the
She left.
delegation
She
was
left.
attacked.
Yeah, she left Singapore in the afternoon, right? So, oh my god, let
Yeah.
me check the news.
we got to find out what happened.
Is Charles in the room?
Yes,
And
he
Charles,
is.
did you Charles, do you have any progress with your friends in London or?
But Chris, did you show him the name of the company in the Chinese company?
We missed Charles that night, but yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with Charles.
So this is really interesting. We've been talking about Havana syndrome recently because Chris had an interesting lead on what might be actually behind it, because he worked in the aquatic lighting industry, and there was a technology to do remote strong microwaves that kind of enable lighting over a distance. Chris, can you kind of give us the quick dirty on the
Yeah,
tech?
basically when we create light, we usually will in one method we take electricity and there's a envelope of gas, and when the electricity jumps across the gas like making a spark, it creates the light. That's called high intensity discharge lighting. And the big issue there is over time, the electrodes, the metal that's in the light bulbs, wears out and the light bulbs go bad. So these guys came up with a light bulb that's completely sealed and has no physical contact with the light source, with the power. So basically, this thing is like a magnifying glass that will send radio waves. Believe it or not, radio waves can be focused just like light can, because it is light. And these guys have figured out a way to basically focus that light into a very constant, or that radio wave into a very concentrated area and cook things with it. So they're basically cooking that capsule of light with radio waves. And
Similar to burning ants with a magnifying glass.
exactly.
Right.
And so this
But
company
using
got bought.
invisible radio waves. And by the way, so this is a personal friend of yours
Microwaves,
that you
yeah.
went to college with. You and Cam both went to college with, if I understand correctly.
No, this is different. This is
Okay.
I just met them professionally, but I am friends with the founder, and then the inventor, who's now dead, was a friend of mine too. So,
And the inventor died in a mysterious plane crash after he sold the
yeah,
company to a Chinese company, who then fired everybody and said, "We acquired you for lots of millions of dollars, and we're shutting the company down." Right?
yep.
Rather mysteriously. That isn't
And then
normally what happens. But they
and then the real kicker is my friend is taking that same technology and is now working on a medical device focused on what's called radio ablation of cancer. So basically, this uses radio waves to kill cancer. Because what happens is when cells are multiplying, and I'm sorry, my daughter's in the background. There's this phase called mitosis or telophase, and that's when your DNA splits up and says, "Hey, let's make copies." This stops that phase of
copy.
mitosis from happening.
Yeah.
So it basically causes the brain to stop growing, and so they're using this in brain cancer treatment. But if Havana syndrome is what they say that is, it seems to line up really well, because Havana syndrome seems to be some kind of like gray or white matter destroying phenomenon. So
now, what's weird about this? One second, John Francois. What's really weird about this is Havana syndrome was first really widely recognized in Havana when the American embassy reopened around 2013, 14-ish. I happened to be there at that moment when the flag was raised on the new embassy. However, those embassy team members were reporting these Havana syndromes, hence the name Havana syndrome. It is now more recently being reported in Austria by American diplomats and very recently in Berlin. Now, this is the first known case in Asia with Vice President Harris arriving in Hanoi. And what's strange is it was only in the past 3 days that we came up with a conspiracy theory that we're cooking up that it might be this Chinese company that acquired this technology from Chris's friend, who then mysteriously shut the company down for no clear reason, and the company disappeared after acquiring the technology. So, but that would put it more in our conspiracy theory, hence the music, puts it more as looking at the possibility that China might be behind this. And it was not known. It's assumed that it's either Russia or China or obviously some enemy of the U.S. and who also has a lot of technology skills. So it puts Russia and China kind of at the top of the possible list of possibilities here. And our conspiracy theory here that we're cooking up that we just outlined for you clearly is implicating China. But the fact that this just happened in Hanoi with Kamala Harris also kind of fits with our theory, our conspiracy theory that this could be China behind this. Sorry, Jeff. John Francois.
Yeah, if you want to go out of the conspiracy theory, we can just look at the U.S. military. They have the active denial system that is a directed energy weapon. That's pretty much the same on how it works, and then you can go read on it on Wikipedia. So it will give you a hint on what could be possible with this. But it's active denial system, ADS. Thanks.
Now, there's one other interesting little detail in this, which is Vice President Harris's trip to Singapore and Hanoi. The reasons she's meeting with the leaders of Singapore and Vietnam is precisely to, by the way, hours before she got on the flight in Singapore to go to Hanoi, she made a public statement that says, hey, China, game over in the South China Sea. We are uniting to confront you. To your claims to the South China Sea are unconstitutional, and we are uniting as Singapore and Vietnam and Japan and what's called the First Nation chains, all of those countries in that region. America is there. She's there with the expressed consent, obvious consent. Her whole entire reason for going there and meeting with them is to unify militarily against China. So that's an interest to add, the fact that she's, receiving on the receiving end of this also adds a little more to our conspiracy brew that it is China that's behind this.
Yeah, and so this has been formulating in my mind for at least 5 or 6 months, because as I started reading about Havana syndrome and making some connections in my past work, I had kind of casually texted my friend like, hey, I think they're doing this with it. And he didn't really have a response, but I shared my last text with you, and he basically, he kind of posted an emoji saying, oh shit.
Yeah. So
Chris, what's the physiology of this? I mean, I thought these weapons were supposed to be like short range crowd disbursement weapons, yet there are people who've been permanently damaged or scarred or
what Jean
injured.
Francois is talking about is active denial. So usually those are often sonic or other. Sometimes they'll use infrared. They actually have one that they joke about that's a diarrhea gun. Like they can play a sound that'll make you shit your pants right there.
I want one for personal use, but that's a separate story.
Mine's called Chipotle.
You mean like 3 doors down?
Anyways, the physiology that I understand is, it relates to cellular replication. It seems to disrupt the cellular replication process.
Okay, now
so I think that's why there's such long-term implications. And again, John's going to smack me right now for saying this stuff.
Okay, now check this out.
Yeah, that's my theory.
So I have an article right here in front of me from AP News. AP is as legit as it gets. So I'm tweeting this out right now, and I'm going to read a bit of it. Watch, and I'm just going to read what VP Harris said right before getting on the plane. And the headline photo from the AP News is VP Harris getting back. The text under the photo says U.S. Vice President Harris waves goodbye as she departs Singapore to Vietnam, getting on the Air Force One, or whatever this presidential plane. Okay, so she's got no problems about at this moment when she gets on the plane in Singapore to go to Vietnam. So she left Singapore with no problems. Right before she gets on the plane, she says the following: "We know." This is a direct quote. "We know that Beijing continues to coerce, to intimidate, and to make claims to the vast majority of the South China Sea," she said in a foreign policy speech Tuesday in Singapore, in which she laid out Biden's administration's visions for the Indo-Pacific. Here's her quote again. "Beijing's actions continue to undermine the rules-based order and threaten the sovereignty of nations." And she declares that the U.S. stands with our allies and our partners in the face of threats from China. And her subsequent stop in Vietnam was delayed several hours due to an investigation into possible incident of Havana syndrome. Oh, so it might have happened in Singapore. As mysterious health ailment
No.
plaguing U.S. diplomats in Hanoi. The speech sought to comment or cement the U.S. commitment to supporting its allies in the area of growing importance to the Biden administration, which has made countering China's influence globally a centerpiece to the foreign policy. And this is the order that the U.S. wants. The U.S. always tries to make use of the rules in order to justify it. And then, by the way, her quote that I just read to you about unifying to push back against China's claims of the South China Sea and sovereignty of Taiwan and whatnot. China was so bothered by this that the one of the ministers of China made a comment. So they were clearly very upset by Vice President Harris's visit and the things that she said. So much so that they made a statement rather immediately. So clearly they're upset more than Russia is. Russia doesn't really care. So why is Harris and her entourage being hit with Havana syndrome? I think China's screwing up and making it just a little too obvious now that it isn't Russia and it's more likely China who's behind this.
But aren't these type of weapons quite large? I mean, I suppose they might be able to fit in the back of a van, or do they need more of a power system or something? I mean,
This thing was 300 watts. I carried it when I travel. The looks I'd get from the TSA as I was traveling would be kind of nutty. The thing has it's like got metal and glass and cables. Like when I show up at my colleagues' places, because it was aquarium lighting, I joke like, what part of the methamphetamine manufacture process does this thing look like it comes from? But it's small. It's like at most would fit in a small backpack.
so it's a little bit larger than, say, one of those cell phone jammers, personal jammers that could jam, like, I don't know, 5 to 20 meters or something. It's like a
Yeah, I mean, because it is just using a radio. Like it's literally just a radio and amplifier that they've tuned to put out
What do
the
you
right
suspect the
frequency.
range is, Chris? Is this something that you could be in a hotel room a block away, or is it like? And how directed is the beam?
The beam can be directed very fine. I mean, the approach we use is what's called a microwave resonance cavity. I'm sorry to get so into it, but basically what that means is the shape of a metal object will cause a lens. So if you can imagine, you have a cup or something, right? If the shape of a cup would create a beam somewhere. I don't know what it looks like, but there would be a focal point of that cup at somewhere. And that's the same thing with the RF, is that the shape of the resonance cavity will dictate the lensing, so to speak.
And
So
obviously, it goes through walls, doors,
yeah, and when
windows.
I was playing with them, I was saying, like really, what's in my hand is actually a ray gun, but they haven't really figured it out yet.
well, that's really scary to think that these things could be everywhere and manufactured quite quickly and hidden from governments and security.
I mean, to put it in perspective, right, guys? You can buy a microwave right now from Target for $50. The magnetron in that microwave is 1,000 watt magnetron, and that's what that's essentially what's getting what they're likely doing is they're taking a magnetron, popping it through a resonance cavity, and adjusting the focal length somehow.
So there's another headline that may or may not have something to do with this. From the South China Morning Post, which is from China, China delivers more COVID-19 vaccines to Vietnam on eve of Vice President Harris's visit. China says shipment of 200,000 doses made it to the Vietnamese military's request. Before leaving for Hanoi, U.S. Vice President says Washington stands with its allies in facing Beijing's threat in the region. And then a separate headline from South China Morning Post says Harris's Southeast Asia visit draws ire of Chinese netizens. The U.S. Vice President's trip has been picked apart on platforms such as Weibo, which is China's Twitter, with many posts questioning why she's not in Afghanistan. Analysts say that because she's building up a defense against China in the South China Sea. Analysts say that while Singapore is looking to remain neutral, it backs Washington's presence in the region, and Beijing is aware of that. So,
Damn it.
Aren't China and Vietnam kind of sworn enemies, Tyler, or am I
yes and no.
misunderstanding?
Yes and no. North Vietnam and South Vietnam itself are two interesting. I mean, that was the fight. North Vietnam and South Vietnam were fighting each other. And the North Vietnam was communist and South Vietnam was not. And North Vietnam, Hanoi, has still today a lot of Chinese influence. Vietnam as a country, because of Ho Chi Minh City and the whole South, as a country, they're very not they really don't like China's policies around the South China Sea, because basically China's
They went to war, right? When was it, in the 70s? Or
China
China
is
and
claiming
Vietnam went to,
yeah, China's claiming all of the water and all in front of Vietnam, all of it. All of it, all of it, all of it. It's all China's, and Vietnam's like, what the fuck are you talking about? If you're nowhere near this water, this is our water. What do you? This is like Canada claiming Mexico's water. I mean, that's just to give you some context. So Vietnam really is perturbed by this, and that's their biggest issue. One could argue that with China. So in this issue, they are in alignment with all the other countries in Vietnam and Japan and Philippines and all of the South China Sea countries, are all kind of unifying to kind of stand up on this issue, because they need to be able to do shipping and importing and exporting and fishing and all this stuff. And China's claiming, no, it's all ours, all of it. And these countries are really sick of this. So that's why Harris is over there. And while they're at it, they might as well all recognize Taiwan as its own independent, democratically elected country. And that gets to another kind of breaking
Yeah,
news
Tyler.
story. Yeah.
Tyler, just a quick thing there. In Asia, except like India, maybe everyone, no one wants, like everyone wants to be friends with America, but no one wants to be enemy with China. And this expansion, Harris' visit, as basically was long due, and it sort of is an expansion of Quad. Quad, which basically initially was seen as a tend to military alliance, but because of the reservations by the other countries that they can't be seen as a military alliance against China, Quad is becoming more of a strategic alliance, and this is part of Harris's visit is part of that expansion of Quad, and she is there to convince other countries to join Quad in future as a strategic alliance in Indo-Pacific.
Okay. So other interesting
Tyler,
headlines.
real
Yes,
quick,
Lakeisha,
real
go.
quick. So the other breaking headline is around Airbnb providing, I think, 20,000
Yes.
people in Afghanistan beds. And remember how we've been talking about how the Taliban was aligning itself with China or vice versa. So it's interesting to me that both of these stories broke within hours of each other. So I don't know that they are totally isolated,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of coordination between actors that happens behind the scenes. And so I just find it curious that both of these things happened. And I wonder what role, if any, the US government had in, working with Airbnb to provide, housing to people to escape from Afghanistan, being that the people that were probably at the top of the list were people who've helped U.S. service members and worked as translators, and they were at high risk of their own personal safety.
Sure. Yeah, they've done this before. They have a bit of a history of when shit's really hitting the fan of making doing things like this. I'm trying to remember the last time they did one of these campaigns, but it was a very similar situation. It's escaping me what it was. Okay. So
Was it after a fire or something? I mean, I vaguely
that
remember.
is what it was. The
Yeah.
people fleeing California
Yeah,
fires,
I
something
think
like that.
so. I
Yeah.
think so. But I think this is different because this is geopolitical. I
Or
mean,
no.
that was based.
It was Texas when Texas was freezing and the power was
Yes,
going out.
okay. It was
Yeah.
something, but it was domestic, and it was,
God, that was so much
more of
fun.
a climate crisis, natural disaster, not something that's geopolitical. So I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's a good thing that they, are assisting, but I just think that the timing is interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
There's also an article that I think we know that they are going to evacuate some of the Afghanistan refugees to the military base in Spain. Initially, they are thinking about having some in South Korea and Japan too, but I think they kind of decided not to do that.
Okay. So other big headlines at the moment is Apple already scans your iCloud mail for child abuse images, and they have for 3 years. So why are you worried about them scanning your photos and your iCloud files as they plan to do next month? Because people were freaking out when this was revealed that they were going to be doing this child abuse image scanning in your photos, both on your device and in iCloud. And they got letters from 5,500 cybersecurity experts and Edward Snowden, and even the German parliament was asking them not to do this. And then Apple's now responding, oh, what's the problem? We've been doing this inside of your mail since 2019. Really clever jujitsu move there by Apple on that one. And then the next headline is that YouTube says its partner program now has 2 million members. The program to pay its creators launched 14 years ago exactly. And I remember the day it launched because I was the first paid YouTube partner for my account. And interestingly, the rate has been consistent for all 2 million partners get the exact same rate, which is the same rate I got back then, back in 2007. So they've done tremendously well with this. And it says they've now passed the 2 million creator mark, including creators like PewDiePie and Jenna Marbles and, of course, Mr. Beast and whatnot. Creators who qualify for the partner program, you need at least 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of overall watch time on your channel in the past 12 months. And a whole lot of creators making a whole lot of money now on the platform. And it doubled in the past 12 months. So they added 1 million in the past 12 months, if I understand correctly. So kudos to the YouTube team for that. The next headline, Todd McLeese sends this one in from Nikkei Japan, that Samsung to invest $206 billion by 2023 for post-pandemic growth. Conglomerate aims to expand in biopharmaceutical, AI chips, and robotics. Makes sense. Todd also sending in this one from The Verge that Apple employees are organizing now under the banner #Apple2, as in Apple TOO, like the Me Too movement. This is the Apple II movement. The effort launched August 23rd, that's yesterday, with the website and a Twitter account. So Apple employees organizing took another step this morning with the launch of a website called Apple II. The goal is to collect stories from workers at all levels of the organization who've experienced harassment and discrimination. For too long, Apple has evaded public scrutiny, the website reads. The truth is that for many Apple workers, the culture of secrecy creates an opaque, intimidating fortress. When we press for accountability and redress to the persistent injustices we witness or experience in our workplace, we are faced with a pattern of isolation, degradation, and gaslighting. No more. We're exhausted. We've exhausted all internal avenues. We've talked with our leadership. We've gone to the people team. We've escalated through business conduct. Nothing has changed. It's time to think different. Oh boy, where's my comedy sound there? Only about 15%, only about 15 current and former Apple employees were directly involved in the organizing effort. This morning, the organizers launched the website and the Twitter account and sent the news out on a 200-person Discord server for Apple employees and contractors. The effort has already gained support from organizers like Timnit Gebru, who worked for Apple prior to joining Google in 2018 after Gebru was abruptly fired from Google in December 2020. She went public about her experiences with racism and discrimination at Google, but she hasn't spoken quite so publicly about her time at Apple. Now she tells The Verge, I experienced so many egregious things when I was at Apple and always wondered how they managed to get out of the spotlight. I'm happy to see that Apple workers are organizing. It is past time for Apple to be held accountable. Cher Scarlett, an Apple engineer and activist who's involved in the organizing effort, posted the website in 2 internal Slack channels and this morning. Since the launch, 8 Apple employees have shared their stories with the Apple II website. So let's check out the Twitter account. It's got 1,694 followers. It's not following anybody. And they've done 24 tweets. So, interesting one to follow, that one. Apple workers, hashtag Apple II. Okay, so imagine those people will be let go tomorrow. And thank you to Todd for that one. The next one is from Abgent. He sends this one in from Politico, that the data left behind is Politico's title. How the Taliban could mine Afghan data to target U.S. allies. Having seized Kabul, the Taliban can tap into government databases and communications data to go after U.S. allies who don't get out. U.S. officials racing to evacuate Afghan allies have limited time before another threat comes into play. Vast digital data stores that will expose Afghans' ties to American operations on a mass scale once in Taliban's hands. Telecom companies store reams of records on who Afghan users have called and where they've been. Government databases include records of foreign-funded projects and associated personnel records, and stashes of biometric data like fingerprints make people easy to identify. Here's the quote. There's almost no doubt that they've gotten their hands on enormously valuable trove of information that they can exploit at their leisure, said Thomas Warwick, a former Department of Homeland Security counterterrorism official. American forces and diplomats rushed to destroy their own records on Afghan citizens as they departed, but the rapid takeover of Kabul left large stores of data open for exploitation inside Afghan businesses and government offices. That gives today's technologically adept Taliban tools to target Afghans who worked with the U.S. or deposed Afghan government with unprecedented precision, increasing the danger for those who don't get out on evacuation flights. Much of the attention has been on the race to scrub data of the internet. And it goes on and on and on.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Oh boy.
So the other piece to that is the head of the CIA just had a secret meeting with the head of the Taliban. So yeah, it seems as though the U.S. government is, well, they're at least in talks, and they may be trying to negotiate. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to overstate it, but they have met within the past 24 hours.
I mean, the Taliban has honored every part of the agreement that they said that they would do with Qatar, the U.S., and Turkey. You know, people who compare it to Saigon, it's kind of offensive to people who were there. There were thousands of people who died in the attack on Saigon, and that hasn't happened here. so people can, and this claim that everyone's super afraid. I mean, you have a huge plane taking people from a sort of semi-primitive society. I mean, no disrespect meant to the Afghans out there, but it's basically what it is. There are many, many countries on the planet where if you said, "Hey, get in, we're going to America," people would fight to the death to get on that plane. And so I think there's a lot of people trying to use the propaganda campaign here to try and make, the Taliban of 2021 is not the Taliban of 2001. They have different financial backers. They have different interests aligned around them. I mean, there's different people. I mean, the average Afghan is 18 years old. So just to put that in perspective. So Taliban has honored their part of the agreement more or less. And so people who are being a bit histrionic here, I think should really like look at it in the totality.
Biden decides to keep it about. Okay, so the next headline here is, that was the data left behind. That's Politico. The next one is from Lookcast. Sends this one in that in a viral video has been released. Somebody hacked into an Iranian prison in a city called Evan and released the videos, and the videos show the prison guards physically assaulting and abusing the prisoners. Lots of different video footage, several incidences. Iranian now we revealed that when we were here 8 hours ago, and now the Iranian prison chief issues an apology after hacked video shows abuse of prisoners. Iran's prison authority boss has issued an apology for bitter events that were recorded in Tehran's Evin jail. Footage obtained by hackers shows a detainee being beaten and dragged around the facility. In a rare admission of human rights abuses on Tuesday, the head of the Iranian Prisons Authority accepted responsibility for the shocking events recorded by the hacking group Ali's Justice. Regarding the pictures from Evin Prison, I accept responsibility for such unacceptable behavior and pledge to try to prevent any repeat of these bitter events and to deal seriously with the wrongdoers, Mohammad Mehdi, head of Iran's prison, said in a tweet. He directed his apology to God Almighty, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, the people of Iran, and honorable prison guards. He added that the efforts of good prison guards would not go ignored. The jail in question, Evin Prison, has long been criticized by Western powers and rights groups and was blacklisted by Washington in 2018 for serious human rights abuses. Detainees are mostly held on security charges. It has also been reported that prisoners of dual nationality are also held at the jail. Graphic footage recorded by the prison security cameras shows guards beating prisoners while one is dragged around the facility. In a shocking scene, a cleric appears to step over a collapsed inmate who was lying prostrate on the ground. And there's a whole bunch of videos. And they even have the cameras even record the moment that the prison chief realized that they had been hacked. Hackers have access to security camera footage from inside the Iranian prison, and they even hacked the cameras inside the control room of the prison, where the chief and his underlings, watch all of the video footage, and they turn around to look at the camera with rather.
Must be so comical. I mean, I know it's not funny, but like, dude, imagine being the hacker, like seeing the look on their face as they looked at the camera and realized they were hacked.
Yes, that's actually what happened. It's caught on film. You see the guy who's looking at all of the TV screens. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 TV monitors in their control room. They're watching the TV monitors. On the TV monitors appears a warning, we've hacked you. They turn around and look at the security camera in the room. And the tweet says, "This is the moment the officials in Evin Prison realized that they had been hacked. Hackers have accessed security camera footage from inside the Iranian prison, where political prisoners are being held, and posted videos of guards beating inmates." But you have to look at the article I just tweeted to the Tech News Twitter account and then open
I
the.
wonder what country could be to blame for hacking an Iranian prison. I mean, I don't know. It's such an interesting question. You
Yeah,
know,
there's one country I think who has been regularly hacking Iran, and I didn't, and which is their arch enemy Israel.
it's the French, of course, right, Armish, or is it the Finns?
My bet is that the country begins with an I. One of the countries that
Italy
begins with
Leave
again,
an
huh?
Italy out of this. Yeah, let's leave Italy out of this. The next one is from Nikkei Asia via our friend Cheryl. After tech and education, Nikkei Asia asked the question in the headlines: after tech and education, will luxury goods be the target of China's next crackdowns? Hermes, Gucci fear crackdown under Uncle Xi's common prosperity push. Oh, that's why. I didn't connect the dots until the last line, because Uncle Xi, affectionately known locally as Winnie the Pooh, is cracking down on big tech and healthcare and the price of housing, and he's trying to improve the birth rate. And then he came, as soon as all of the exits were sealed, prohibiting China's billionaires from fleeing, he announced in the recent days that all of the billionaires will now need to pay up their fair share for common prosperity, is the key word translation there, for the common prosperity of China. So we need all of you wealthy folks. We're going to redistribute the wealth for common prosperity. You know, we are communist after all, and that's nice that you've made billions of dollars, and we have more billionaires than pretty much anywhere in the world. And now we got to share all of that wealth that everyone's been generating.
It's an anti-mob measure, actually, more than anything else. It's about control of the channels of money laundering. So in this case, you have basically the two richest men in the world. I'll note in with sort of luxury French brands and
Yeah,
Bezos.
LVMH.
Yeah, that's what that is. And so, in the case of the crackdowns that we're seeing on price of housing, that's an anti-mob effort. Because the mob tends to like acquiring housing. And in the case of the education stuff, I mean, they're using all their anti-money laundering, all their anti-mob stuff to kind of like regularize everything. We'll see if it works, but that's sort of the direction things are going in.
Yeah, so Chinese mainlanders who play the stock market there are selling or shorting luxury goods like LVMH, Hermes, Gucci fear crackdown, because now the wealthy people aren't going to be as wealthy as they used to be, with Xi's big grand announcement of common prosperity. And LVMH has been booming for the past several years because of China. And Arnault is become the world's wealthiest person. He's the boss of LVMH precisely because of China. And now that China's doing a common prosperity play, that might mean the end of LVMH. Certainly the end of their miraculous growth due to China for the past several years. So that's an interesting point, that maybe luxury goods will be the next, and due to Uncle G's calls for common prosperity.
I was having dinner the other night here with a billionaire in London who was saying that his fund, and he's connected with several pension funds here, that they're starting to implement practices to basically no money coming from China, no Chinese dealings, because they don't think China's good for business long run. And this sort of, there's sort of like a global everyone get into each own's corner now going on, where there's a sort of incipient nationalism of cutting things down, which seems like people who thought that the end of Trump was the end of that were sorely mistaken.
So David Craves found this one from Bloomberg, that late to the fintech boom, Nigerian banks turn to regulators for help. Now that they've got multiple fintech unicorns in Nigeria, the banks are starting to realize, shit, people are going to use these fintechs and not our old antiquated Titanic hitting the iceberg banking systems. We're fucked. Regulators, help. help.
We want to charge people overdraft and slam them for making a mistake.
Yeah. So the banks are, it's just like the media in America, which is, oh, by the way, there's a bill being proposed to give charity to American news outlets because it's a dying industry and they need welfare payouts.
Tyler, I was kind of thinking we should find one promising traditional journalist and take them under our wing. Kind of like when a group brings a nerdy kid
we
into the
could
fray.
we could bring in my cousin, yeah. So
It's that's what I was going to add. It's not only that. I think it's potentially more serious if Nigerians start exiting, because of course a lot of the startups are U.S. Delaware incorporated. It's starting to show up the weaknesses of the Nigerian ecosystem on the ground. I mean, there's even a funny chat someone tweeted once. They were like, you know how you kind of paraphrase it. It's like, the Nigerian government says we need to diversify the economy away from oil, and the fintechs say we can help, and then the Nigerian government says, okay, we'll take 10% of the revenue. and then the fintechs say, give us steady power, right, and infrastructure, and then then the Nigerian government leaves the chat, right? It's like the Nigerian government and the Nigerian ecosystem, banks, etc., need to support the ecosystem on the ground more. Otherwise, they'll see more and more Nigerians start to leave, as well as not supporting the naira currency and using the dollar more, right? So I think this is just one of many aspects of the Nigerian economy that need to wake up to the fact that the best Nigerian talent will go elsewhere if they don't, right?
okay,
Well,
good.
that is if the government increasingly allows them to leave, right? Which is another kind of question in Nigeria, right? I
Um,
mean, the presumption here is that people are going to be allowed to leave their countries, and increasingly with biometrics, that's kind of no longer the case.
Well, there's already a lot of Nigerian diaspora, so I think you can separate out first the Nigerian diaspora who have been investing into the Nigerian ecosystem, and I'd love to have someone come up here from Nigeria in the audience who can give us more light. But I think you have Nigerian diaspora who could be participating more in the Nigerian economy and leaving the big tech companies or other startups and helping more in Nigeria. They may not come back, but also the best tech talent on the ground may start, trying to find other opportunities outside of Nigeria if they can't find them in Nigeria. And of course your aspect there, Charles, around can they leave? I've been in some Nigerian clubhouse rooms where the talent is starting to say, look, I'm going to go to Canada, I'm going to immigrate to the U.S. I don't have steady power. I don't have, my naira currency is worthless more and more. I want to put my money more into the dollar or Bitcoin. It's obviously a big deal. So I think the government can control that more, which is also why they're trying to freeze fintechs potentially, folks who are trying to move money out of the country. Capital controls will be probably more enforced, and this is where the fintechs are also helping Nigerians with this, right? So I think that's where government will start to put on the regulation and control. But yeah, like I'd love to hear from a Nigerian to hear more about this, maybe in another side room or and But yeah, it's like something that I'm watching very carefully to see how the Nigerian talent as a whole react.
Okay. So then another headline here. Jean-Francois is in the news. Is he on stage? I think he was a bit ago.
Yeah,
There
I
he
am.
is. Yahoo Finance says that Leah27, which is your company, partners with pioneering computer vision company DID, artificial intelligence company Leah27, aka Jean-Francois, announced today a partnership with DID, a global leader in AI video reenactment technology. The partnership is a major breakthrough for the field of AI as the fully autonomous Leah 27 takes the next major step towards creating real-time audio and video interactions with humans. As a result of this partnership, Leah 27's flagship technology, Leah, a digital person created by artificial intelligence that is constantly learning and evolving with every user interaction, is now producing sector-leading 3D videos. These videos can be seen on her social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And combining the deep learning technology from DID with Leah 27's AI videos, which normally take weeks to generate through CGI, can now be made in a few minutes. This drastically reduces the time and cost associated with creating animated films, while also offering a wealth of marketing opportunities at the fraction of the current market cost. What else should we say, Jean-Francois? First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, it's Basically,
Yeah, well done.
Congrats.
Well done, man. Awesome.
Good
thanks.
job.
So basically, what it's doing is like if you compare, like doing comparison with the car, like electric car versus gasoline car. So it's just doing the same thing but completely different technology. So everybody will think that all the video that are on Leah when she's talking is CGI, but it's not at all. It's AI, deep learning, deep fake technology that we use with DID, and DID is a pioneering and really probably one of the best in this field with de-identification and deep learning algorithm we use for moving pictures, and we use it with them for Leah, and then we made this partnership for the last 2 months that we start, and we really like what we're doing with them, and I hope it will get in the future with the 24/7 like live streaming that you could be like you can imagine a YouTube channel, Leah reading some news or any kind of discussion or live chat, live Zoom conference using this technology, speech to text to speech, and then rendering those video in live. So you could have like those CG emotion in a live feed 24/7. Thanks, Dan Speaker.
Jean-Francois, do they use these progressive GANs to create those the progressive?
It's yeah, it's a kind of a GAN, but GAN will use like they probably train the model with they train the model at first with de-identification. So the technology used like when Facebook is trying to see if a person is matched the database, they put pixels in the pictures so the AI algorithm will not find out who the person is on the picture. So they start with this, and then they figured out that if they get those point match using video and then train the model with video, they will be able to recapture and doing the motion of the lips and everything pretty much as the same as the CGI will have done. So it's machine learning algorithms that they use. It's not GAN because they will have to use like it will build fake images, but on this point it's similar to what motion capture do, but with AI. Thanks.
Got it.
Okay.
That's pretty awesome.
So, other interesting headlines at the moment. According to David Craze sends this one in from The Guardian, that phones of 9 Bahraini activists found to have been hacked by NSO spyware. That's the Israeli company behind Pegasus. Researchers say bloggers and members of secular left-wing political group among the victims. So, who was targeting Bahraini activists? Well, probably Bahrain or somebody in the region. The mobile phones of 9 Bahraini activists, including 2 who were granted asylum protection and are now living in London, were hacked between June 2020 and February 2021 using NSO spyware, according to new findings by researchers at Citizen Lab in Toronto. A report to be released on Tuesday will reveal that the hacked activists, some of whose phones were being monitored at the time they were hacked, include 3 members of WAD, a secular left-wing political group that was suspended in 2017 amid a crackdown on peaceful dissent in Bahrain. So it sounds like the government of Bahrain is in on this. Okay. Next one, thank you for that one, David, is that the Department of Homeland Security seeks technology to perform crowd counting and analysis. And it says the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate is seeking proposals for technology that can perform crowd count and analysis, aimed at providing first responders with enhanced situation awareness. The technologies will be considered for inclusion in the National Urban Security Technology Laboratories market survey intended for law enforcement and emergency response agencies. The proposal being sought must be able to conduct video and post-event analysis and not rely on facial recognition systems. Utilizing real-time crowd analysis technology could allow for more accurate and effective response operations to ensure the safety of everyone involved. So there you go. If you want to
What
build,
a coincidence! I just invested in such a company a week ago. Huh?
the next one's from some guy named Cal Patel about Best Buy. It says Best Buy shares rise on a really strong quarter, beating earnings expectations. Retailer says consumers are upgrading tech to work at home, and that's why Best Buy is booming. The next one from Anita via Reuters. Headline reads, exclusive U.S. SEC, Security Exchange Commission, to scrutinize firms' digital engagement practices as investor worries grow. The SEC will seek input on whether digital customer engagement innovations used by the financial firms should be regulated. And this Cal Patel guy's really on a roll with the tweets today. Sends this one in from CNBC that China's cyberspace regulator lays out two main conditions for companies wanting to IPO. And it's all about the data. The next one's from Joe Williams. He sends this one in. The headline reads, an AI-driven, invisible mobile keyboard that lets you type 157% faster. Researchers from South Korea have used machine learning techniques to develop an invisible keyboard for space-constrained mobile devices that allows you to type 157% faster. And then Samer, who's originally from Iraq, sends this one in from CNN that says why the U.S. should stay in Iraq. As U.S. forces prepare to end their combat mission in Iraq, the journalist writes that America shouldn't abandon its Kurdish allies. So if Samer is in the audience, which he very often is, it would be great to hear his take on this as he sent this in. And I just retweeted this and like all the articles to the Tech News Twitter account. And now this one, that telehealth enabled NASA to care for astronauts in orbit. But NASA is eyeing the moon and beyond with telehealth. Fantastic. It works in space with doctors on Earth. I had not considered that. That's truly fantastic news.
Everything over the next 20 years has to be space focused. Like it literally, if your company doesn't have an eye on space, it probably won't be here in 20 years.
Here's one from CNN that McDonald's has run out of milkshakes in the UK. McDonald's has been forced to stop selling milkshakes and bottled drinks at nearly 1,300 restaurants in the UK as Brexit-related staff shortages. And this has led to a very funny cartoon of the new McMenu in the UK. It's called the Brexit menu because due to Brexit, they no longer have chicken and meat for McDonald's, and so it shows the McBun. It's a burger with no meat and this empty box of chicken nuggets. And
Some of us say that they never had meat to begin with.
it's just a clever cartoon. So the next article from Renjant that Spotify commerce is here. Commerce on Spotify. Whoever would have predicted such a wild thing that Spotify would be doing commerce? This is truly unbelievable. And Renjit deserves full credit for this. He found a job posting that Spotify made for an engineer to build the commerce platform. Our team's focus is to enable users to purchase any product Spotify has to offer by building a state-of-art commerce platform. We're investing heavily into this product area as we look to reimagine the distributed services we need in order to best serve Spotify's current and future commerce goals. As we look to diversify and evolve our products further, to become an e-commerce platform, so all of our influential artists, of which we have all of the top musicians in the world, could, sell digital goods, physical goods, their t-shirts, their tickets, either virtual conference performances in their version of Clubhouse, on and on and on. Here it comes. I told you it's coming. You think Spotify makes a lot of money now? Wait until they're all of their influencers, and they only have these really small influencers that you've never heard of, like Taylor Swift and Jay-Z and Beyonce. You probably never heard of these people. They're really not that influential. Never mind. Forget it. Forget I mentioned it. It's probably not going to work. So the next one is from The Verge that Google Meet now warns you when you're causing an echo. That's fantastic. Maybe Clubhouse could add this, the person tweeted. That would be fantastic as well. The next one from the BBC, sensors and AI to watch Dorset social care patients. Data from sensors in patients' homes will be analyzed to warn of health problems. And I love this idea of smart homes for the elderly, like elderly care homes with a lot of sensors and cameras and everything. It's a really interesting use case. This one, that Russia is using new hardware to target Putin's number one rival, Navalny. So Russia is using new hardware to target Navalny's anti-Kremlin app. Navalny and his allies want to use the app and their website to organize a tactical voting campaign in September. And you know Big Daddy Vladdy just loves this, right? You can imagine how thrilled he is that his main political opponent, Navalny, who's becoming a bit of a phenomena in Russia, he's very likely to lose a fair election against Navalny. It's, in fact, an absolute certitude. And so the question is, will Navalny mysteriously fall tragically ill before the election coming up in September? Or how else will Putin manage to derail Navalny's in the upcoming election? So Navalny and his allies want to use the app and their website to organize a tactical voting campaign at the September 17th through 19th vote to land a blow to the ruling United Russia Party that dominates the political landscape. The smart voting campaign requires followers to sign up and be allocated a candidate who is judged to have the best chance of defeating the party in the election district. It is one of Navalny's few remaining levers after a crackdown banned his movement as extremist this summer. Several of his websites have since been blocked. Communication watchdog has told Google and Apple to remove the app from the stores. Neither has done that so far, and the app has been trending in Russia's online segment. Oh boy. Oh, too funny. Google, I can just imagine what Google and Apple are telling the Kremlin.
How can somebody buy a life insurance policy on Navalny?
On Navalny, yeah. Late on Monday, Navalny's allies accused Russia's authorities of moving to block it. Efforts, they said, had intensified since Friday and meant the app was not loading content for some users. We fixed some things, and now the accessibility of the app is around 70%, the ally said. Yeah, I don't see how he will be alive come voting day. So the next article is from David. We covered the DHS one. This one from Edward Savage sends this one in. That massive Microsoft data breach exposes 38 million records, including social security numbers and vaccination data. The personal records of 38 million people were accidentally leaked on the open internet due to a flaw in one in more than 1,000 Microsoft web apps. And this is just your hourly update that Microsoft is Swiss cheese. And China's cyberspace regulator lays out. We covered that. Thank you, Cal.
Tyler,
yes.
there is a breaking news from Charles. Apparently, there's this cold case, Carla Walker's murder.
What?
Do you know her?
Who?
Carla Walker murder.
There's a famous case that just was announced today. The breaking news: it's the first ever conviction, in the state of Texas's history using genomic genealogy. This guy murdered and raped somebody, Carla Walker, back in the day, and today he was convicted to life in prison. And it's the use of this genomic genealogy stuff which now validates it in a courtroom level. So it's kind of essentially we're entering a period where if you have DNA or a face or whatever, violent crime is basically going to be, you can still do it, but you'll get caught. and that's a very exciting world that we're entering now.
I DM you the news.
Okay, thank you. I don't yet see it.
If you search Carla Walker on Twitter, you'll find it.
Okay, they still live in the shadow.
It's in your DM.
Oh,
Twitter DM.
not yet. It's not.
Oh
Now it
no.
is. There it is. Watch live. Carla Walker cold case murder trial enters third something. Defendant waives rights to a jury trial and challenges plea to guilty as day 3 of the trial opened Tuesday. Okay. So I will tweet this out real quick.
Why this matters, just for those who are paying attention, is that this matters now because it means that law enforcement around the U.S. can use genomic genealogy, which is the process by which police have the suspect's DNA, but can't use the CODIS system, which is the other sort of formal system that the FBI uses. And this basically what it means is that a whole bunch of murders and rapes now from the Department of Justice can now use this technology process, which is extremely exciting.
Hey, Charles, can you
Charles,
go ahead?
is
I
this
was,
the same technology that found that guy after 40 years in California, like
Yeah,
2 years ago?
this is basically the institutionalized version of the Golden State Killer process from
Okay,
WoW.
thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, I was going to ask that too because I thought there were other things that this has been used for, unless this is just a, like
it's
you
the
said, like
yeah, it's the
technology.
from a
Yeah.
procedural perspective, it's been used, but it's never gone and been validated in a courtroom setting because usually the guy will plea out. So in this particular case, it was brought up, and he eventually pled here, but because of how the DNA evidence was used, it can now be used across the whole country rather than just in like specific regions of the country.
Okay.
Okay.
Here
So
we go.
don't go murdering people in America or Canada. You can still get
Charles,
away with it in the UK, probably.
Charles, can you clarify? Because I thought that a bunch of news that came out just a few years ago was the older technology they were using with DNA was just not reliable. So this is some newer technology that
That's
has
right. Yeah. So
corrected that. Okay.
yeah. So for those of you who are CSI aficionados, basically there's this system called CODIS that much of basically the Western world uses, in particular the United States and Canada. And what it does is it only looks at 50 base pairs of DNA. And if you've committed a crime, they'll take your DNA and put you into CODIS. But if you have not, which most people who are serial murderers and rapists have not been caught before. Um, what happens is that the government will spend money to try to identify them, and they'll get no matches. And so, what this means from a procedural perspective is that it essentially uses the 23andMe's and ancestries of the world, the data from those sites, because those sites still aren't complying with the federal government, but it essentially uses more genetic information to make matches to solve murders, rapes, missing persons, dead bodies, that kind of thing. And what it's going to do essentially is it's leapfrogging the 1996 technology. And for a lot of people, I know this tech news around the world, and it's quite I'm in London right now, but it's quite late for Americans. What it means for the rest of the world is that if they have a NovaSeq, if they have some software, they can essentially solve all of the crimes, all of the dead bodies. They can identify them all in their countries. That's sort of where the technology is going, and it's starting to already have interesting effects on criminal justice in the U.S. And in Canada. It solved a number of cases, including some high profile ones, and it costs only $5,000 to do it, whereas the competitors cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars and don't always get a result. So it's exciting.
Okay, here we go. So the next big headline here. Charles, hi Tyler, can I ask a Sure. question? My like it would be quite interesting if it can also be used to avoid accusing people wrongfully. There have been a lot of people who have been accused
Indeed.
wrongfully and spent years and years the in the Central Park Four. We know a lot of people, especially the police, getting under pressure to solve the
high profile crimes and things like that. So I hope this helps,
Yes,
avoid that type
it's
of.
interesting you mentioned that, because in Canada, your sort of most famous case was something that Othram worked on, where they had a case where this guy, he was wrongly accused of murdering a little girl, and it cost the Canadian government millions of dollars, and he was ultimately found not guilty, but instead recently Othram found the real killer, and the guy who was wrongly accused, to the tune of millions of dollars of Canadian money, he was sort of exonerated by this process. So the position of Othram is, if you should be in jail, you should be in jail. If you shouldn't be in jail, you shouldn't be in jail, and that we can use genetics rather than police bias or human error, to sort of stop that sort of thing.
No, but I think she may be talking about an opposite situation where, because DNA can come from anywhere. I stopped giving clothes to Goodwill, quite frankly, years ago, because I was concerned I'm going to give clothes to Goodwill and some criminal might end up with it someday. And so my DNA is still on some old shirt. And then, they'll link it back and say, go explain why, and I'm going to say, I don't know, it was 23 years ago. Okay. I mean, because that's the problem with DNA. It just tells you that you touch something, but you may have
Yeah,
given.
it's just one part of a larger case, obviously, and most of these cases, what it does is it identifies the suspect, and if the dead body is in another state or another jurisdiction or what have you, you don't have to worry about. I promise you, given the technology, you don't have to worry. You can still donate to Goodwill and feel good about it. I know I do, both shopping there and donating there. So I wouldn't. It's unless you're a murderer, and then it's probably a good cover. I don't know. But in terms of people who are wrongly in jail, if you know of such people, there's a case recently where a friend of mine was molested, or she was raped, I think is probably a better way of describing it. And so we actually tracked down her rape kit and are getting it processed to discover, who raped her many years back. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that come to play. And in some of these states, in the case of Othram, what's happening is wealthy people in those states are not waiting for the government to actually solve these cases. They're actually going and solving them themselves by donating, $5,000 or crowdfunding to solve these cases. So, and people who also, most of us don't know our second, third, fourth, fifth cousins, and you can actually donate your DNA to Othram if you've done, if you've done consumer genetics testing, and even if you haven't. And so that's a sort of interesting process that's taking place, and it will sort of only be used in the law enforcement setting. So yeah, I mean, it's there are people who are wrongly in jail, and the DNA would help get them out of jail. And there's sort of talk to the ACLU and others about suing over that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, a lot of the major legal defense societies are afraid of the genetics future, and they actually don't want to use a lot of DNA to let people out of jail, which is itself kind of surprising. But there's a lot of political reasons for that, which are sort of beyond the scope of this. But yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting, and I think in the next iteration of the Justice Bill, we're going to see the government spend, they already spend hundreds of millions of dollars on DNA tests that don't work, and now they're increasingly moving to tests that do. So it's exciting stuff.
Okay, we've got a bit of a breaking news item here. This is wild.
So many today.
I know. This is the best one we've had in a minute. So on the subject of Havana syndrome, Chris just found that the headline reads, China used microwave weapon to cook Indian troops, leaving them vomiting in June border clashes, professor claims.
That was a listener, Kinsha, out there. Thank you, Kinsha, for the DM.
Fantastic. This helps us connect another dot here. That it's, America is assuming it's either Russia or China. It's seeming more like China. This headline really makes it really. Hey, China, it's starting to look like it's you, Uncle G. Let me read this. China's military used a microwave weapon to cook India's troops and force them to retreat from a border standoff earlier this year. A Chinese professor has claimed. What? The weapon reportedly left Indian troops vomiting and unable to stand, allowing China to retake two strategically important hilltops in the Himalayas without any exchange of live fire. China's so-called Poly WB-1, a type of microwave weapon, which was first put on display at an air show in 2014. And it shows a truck, and this particular truck, I just tweeted this article out at the Tech News Twitter account, and this truck has a big microwave dish on top of it.
Tyler, I read this news last year. It
Yes,
was declared fake news then itself. So,
China
yeah.
reportedly used a microwave weapon to drive the Indian troops. Okay. India and China are engaging in a long-standing dispute over control over a number of regions. This year has been heightened tensions between the two sides. And in June 20th, Indian troops and an unknown number of Chinese troops were killed when hand-to-hand combat broke out in the Galwan River Valley region. In a recent lecture, Jin Canrong, a professor of international relations at Beijing's Renmin University, said China later used a microwave weapon to retake land on the southern bank of the Penong So Lake in the Ladakh region. According to the Times, which is which Times? New York? Which Times? The Times
It was
UK.
originally published in UK Daily Times.
Yeah, and by the way, they also reported China turns Ladakh battleground with India into a microwave oven. China's military.
Tyler,
Yes.
I just DM you. So the next day after the news that you have, apparently there's another news also on Indian news. India rejects Chinese professor's claim of China using microwave weapons in Ladakh.
Who? Well, say that
I
again,
just DM
please.
you. India rejects Chinese professor's claim on China using microwave weapons.
Okay.
So that's the one day after your article was published.
Okay.
I
Well,
DM you,
so,
yeah.
but okay. So India is saying that the Chinese professor is wrong. Okay.
It's fake news, they say.
No, it's not necessarily fake news.
In the article, it says it's fake news. It's not by
Send
me.
me
It's
the
by the
article.
article. I DM you.
Okay.
Check it.
Here we go. So
So
this
I
one.
think super interesting coming off of Kamala Harris delaying her trip to Vietnam because of targeted wireless radiation fears related to Havana syndrome, which was an article I sent in today. I'm not sure if it got spoken
Yeah,
about
we
yet.
read it
This
an
is
hour
kind
ago. Yeah.
Did you read it now?
It says India on Tuesday dismissed claims by a Chinese professor stating that China was using microwave weapons to defeat Indian forces. According to Indian officials, China is seeding a fake news story about using microwave weapons, referring to Beijing-based professors' assertions that Chinese forces turned the mountaintops into a microwave oven during a recent clash with India that allowed Beijing to recapture two key hilltops in the disputed Borjan region. It's pure and poor psyops from China, said an Indian official who wasn't up there in the mountains in the Himalayas. So he's this Indian official is making a conclusion. Let's put it this way: this is in the fucking Himalayas near Mount Everest. There was only a small handful of Indian military and Chinese military there. There were no officials up there. They had a
There's a heavy, there's a quite a heavy presence now on both sides.
There
But
is
I'll
now.
just tell you this thing.
Hold on, let me
Yeah,
finish my
by
point. So when they had their hand-to-hand combat and there was fatalities on both sides, casualties on both sides, and then this Chinese professor in China is saying, "Oh, by the way, China took over two of the important strategic hilltops by using a microwave weapon that made them vomit and feel ill." And then India's saying, "Nope, no, you didn't. No, you did not. That's
no,
that's
actually
that that's
they did
fake
not take
news."
any hilltop. They did not take any hilltop back because the situation which was there on July after it remained there until January. This before the military is backed off. So that's the reason. Maybe I'm not sure if they've used it or not, but a lot of sci-fi stuff also came out last year. And actually, we discount generally any of the Chinese professors' analysis. But anyways, people can enjoy. That's fine.
According to Washington Examiner, the Beijing-based professor claimed that. So it's really interesting that this Chinese professor is saying that China did this, and that India is saying no, you didn't. And then now we're now seeing other incredibly similar symptoms in Southeast Asia on when Vice President Harris arrives in Southeast Asia.
What's most
Minutes after she makes comments formally rebuking China.
What's most telling to me is that the Chinese professor was in China when the statement was made, which is not a very safe nor wise thing to do.
Well, no,
So,
unless the government's telling him to do it, of course.
Right.
No, I mean the RF weapons would literally change the battlefield dramatically. So yeah, it is an indication. Like they say, never be out
Well,
indicated, right?
It's like
it's always
smoking
about area
gun.
denial. Yeah, just to be clear about this, we're in a world now with synthetic aperture radar where you can essentially hit anywhere on the planet. If you have a synthetic aperture radar satellite, you can hit it with a hypersonic variable flight, missile for like 10 million bucks, basically. So anything that's above the surface of the Earth, you can deny the area around that kind of thing. And so here you have another area denial weapon, which is you're essentially saying to diplomats, we don't want you in our country, or spies, we don't want you in our country. And in the case of the Chinese, a while back, they hacked the OPM database, which essentially identified all of our spies in Asia. And so we're seeing the use of these kind of technologies, be they missiles to kind of keep us away and out of the South China Sea, be it microwave weapons on the border with India. And I think my understanding is the Indians are worried in general about, as we talked about earlier, being out indicated by the Chinese. And you can kind of see that a lot with the Indians trying to purchase a lot of stuff in genetics from the West. They sort of realize they're behind the curve there. So I think we're going to see more and more of these kind of denial of area weapons. And there are people who believe that COVID itself was a weapon targeting a certain subpopulation. If you look up the genetics of people who've died of extreme forms of COVID, there's a very large number of people from the Indian subcontinent, just not just on a per capita rate. So we're going to start seeing a lot more of these kind of influence games, a lot more of this kind of stuff as time goes on.
I
So
would love to throw something out there,
go ahead, Kevin.
and this is more in relation with the Havana syndrome, the CIA, the 100 CIA people who have been, injured by this. And one theory is that it was not an intentional. It was more they were just trying to spy on them using 5G or whatever wireless. And I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of China actually, admitting they have a wireless weapon, I don't know why they would do that. I think it's definitely that professor probably putting himself more in danger than he should. But the government hasn't really spoken out on this, even though they've done great research on wireless radiation and long-term health effects. Probably the best study that I've seen is one done by Dakun Lee, who now works at Kaiser Permanente in Oakland, California. And this study looked at pregnant women, and they had meters on them that would measure their overall RF wireless radiation. And they found that the people who had higher exposure, the pregnant women with greater wireless exposure, had greater number of miscarriages and different things. So I don't know why we're not hearing more about this, but I do think a lot of it has to do with big tech maybe not wanting us to be aware that we have cell phone radiation standards from 1996, and a time when last week the FCC is being sued and the lawsuit is going through. So I think that there's a lot to consider here with this news.
Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, just to be, I'm not. I was one of these people who sort of switched sides on the 5G debate, and I've become a lot more skeptical of 5G, and we don't really need it in a world in which we have Elon
and the satellites for communications. So I would tend to agree with what Kevin's saying, that we really haven't really looked at the long term health effects of these kind of things in a serious sort of peer reviewed, dispassionate kind of way. I think as our technologies sort of outpace our ability to actually regulate them in social media, it's one thing, but in sort of telecommunications, it's another thing entirely.
Um,
I mean, and
Technology
remember,
always outpaces our ability to regulate them. So yeah, all really good points.
but
Uh,
remember, in this particular case, my friend who's the co-founder of that company, Topanga, he's actively working on anti-mitosis, anti-amniotic technology. So basically, this is affecting you at a cellular level, and they're using 900 megahertz frequency, which is free band. This is open band in the U.S. So there's a lot to be discovered here about what RF does to the human body, and the case is not closed.
can someone find? Did we read the headline yesterday or the day before about? Um, they now need to. What is it? The FTC or who is it about the RF exposure? A case that now needs to be reinvestigated. Kevin. So I'm the one who sent you that article. So in full disclosure, I made a whole documentary about this issue called Mobilize. So, it's out there. We interviewed the co-founder of Apple. He doesn't use his cell phone next to his head, but my associate producer has no financial gain in the project, Dr. Deborah Davis, who, she's very well known. She's worked under I Clinton's just want to administration. read the article again though, because it was a related headline in the past 48 hours about the whatever agency it is that monitors radio frequencies. The FCC, which by the way FCC, has that's it. no, Yeah. no health professionals, it's only electronic engineers. And they always just defer to whatever the health agencies say, the FDA, the EPA. And we're at a time now where we're seeing people from the EPA working at Apple. We're seeing literally the organization CTIA, Okay. Cellular Telecommunication. No, just listen to this one part. The guy who literally ran the lobbying group for telecom, Tom Wheeler, was running the industry, the FCC, for a while. He literally has said cell phones can't be dangerous, and then he's regulating cell phone radiation and safety. It's bananas. And Okay. we've only scratched the surface on it. But So, I'll resend that on Twitter for you. right Sorry, here. I'm on a job.
Tyler, this machine, certainly they have this tech. This machine needs to be like mounted on a big vehicle,
Yeah, I see
and
it. I said that.
generally
I said that
is
already,
yeah.
Armish. Hold on, Armish. So the headline here from yesterday is from a legit geek publication called Tech Dirt. I know that sounds silly, but it's actually a well-known geeky outlet for a long time. And Tech Dirt's headline says a court slaps down the head of the FCC's ruling on 5G safety, likely fueling conspiracy theorists. To be clear, there's absolutely no evidence that 5G technology poses a meaningful impact to human health. Most of the conspiracy theorists claim that otherwise have a head full of pebbles and are uniformly basing those claims on misrepresented evidence of absolute gibberish. That doesn't mean that you don't want to continue studying cellular technology's impact on the human body or adjust your safety standards when the scientific evidence warrants. In December 2019, Ajit Pai, FCC, announced it would not be updating its RF emissions guidelines, which determine safe levels of exposure. The decision, Pai said, was based on comprehensive 6-year review of the available evidence. Several groups that lean toward the conspiratorial had challenged the FCC's decision, forcing a court review. And when the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit actually reviewed the FCC's reviewed the FCC's decision-making process, they found that the FCC didn't really do its due diligence in reviewing the evidence. The court stated in its order that while there very well might be good evidence to not change the standards, the FCC under Ajit Pai didn't actually prove it. Last Friday, the court ruled that the FCC's decision in 2019 that its 1996 radio frequency emission guidelines adequately protect the public was capricious, arbitrary, and not evidence-based, in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. The court also found that the analysis proved by the U.S. Federal Drug Administration, on which the FCC relied for its decision, was also not evidence-based. Again, that's not to say that it wasn't the right call to maintain the same safety standards, just that the FCC didn't actually provide meaningful evidence in making that determination. To be clear,
And where does the head of the FCC, Ajit Pai, now work? Oh, that's right, for a private equity firm that does all sorts of acquisitions in telecommunications. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty bullshit that they were trying to get away with this. And I say
Well,
this as
there's
someone
more to that too.
who
There's more to that too, though, Charles, because in that finding, if you read it right, they start attacking the groups and saying they're conspiracy theorists and everything else. But in that court case, they determined that there was actually no human studies on the effects of 5G, so they couldn't make a basis that it was safe or not safe because they never did a study.
the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. Circuit has ruled that the FCC must re-examine its health and safety guidelines for 5G and other wireless-based technologies. The case was filed in early 2020 by the Environmental Health Trust, another petitioner, the Children's Health Defense, which is chaired by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., filed its own lawsuit, but decided to file joint briefs with the Environmental Health Trust as recommended by the court. Last Friday, the court ruled the FCC's decision in 2019 that the 1996 radio frequency emission guidelines adequately protected but were capricious, blah, blah, blah. It's basically the same article. So what do they now have to do? Do tests and show where does it go from here, do you think, Kevin?
The the cha-
Or Chris, go
the
ahead.
challenge though is the FCC's sole reason for existing is to make sure interoperability between communication systems doesn't interrupt the communication system. So every time you pick up something and it's got a radio in it, there's a little disclaimer on the bottom that'll give you an FCC warning that this device may emit spurious signals, and that this device has been proven that when it does emit spurious signals, it won't cause improper operation of other devices due to that spurious emission. The challenge is that they're not focused on the human beings at all. It's just, does this radio signal affect other communicators or not? I think this is something the FDA needs to work with the FCC to be.
So
I remember.
where's it
I'm
going to
sorry.
go though from here?
We
Well,
need.
I think they need to update the standards. Right now, the FCC
Right.
standard for testing a cell phone
Yes.
was set in 96, doesn't include children. So we look at a model that is of a 6 foot plus person, and we look at it for about 15 minutes in a bowl of jello. And we don't even look at every antenna being used at the same time. I mean, how many? I'm on Clubhouse as I drive, so I use GPS, I use cellular, but when we test the phones, we don't do that. So we need to update the testing just in general. That's one aspect. But I think part of this lawsuit came about because of a news article that came out from Chicago Tribune that literally took every cell phone, the major ones, and tested them at an FCC regulated facility and found that every cell phone they tested went over the FCC standard for radiation. So it's kind of the Wild West. The cell phone industry can test their phones as many times as possible. And if they get over that hurdle one time, it's considered safe, even though they tripped 100 other times trying to get over that radiation hurdle. So that's something really to consider. And we have no standards for pregnant women at all. And meanwhile, the lobbyists are pushing, oh, you need to get on this baby texting app. So it's crazy to see the lobbyists for the cell phone industry sound like anti-vaxxers because they don't listen to the science at all. They don't want to argue the science. And we're seeing that play out exactly right now.
Yeah, I think this will be like the smoking industry from years to come, and I think this is a lot of the politics around 5G and Huawei's stuff being integrated into the U.S. system. A lot of it was also because other countries had their own 5G systems that they wanted to implement in the U.S., and I think we're just going to leapfrog the technology entirely. And I think one of the problems here, oh well, so there's the conspiracy theorist argument that they're trying to make everybody sick. I don't necessarily buy that, but I do think that it is true that our phones emit way more radiation than has been really measured in a serious way, and there are people who are sensitive to that radiation who will have physiological effects, and I think we're going to start to see way more of that. And I think part of the reason you're seeing the government take up this issue in a serious way. Because remember, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, like that's, other than the Supreme Court, that's like one of our highest courts in the land, right? So part of the reason you're seeing this is because there is a view among some in the intelligence world that we should actually be using the satellite communications instead of the 5G stuff in the first place. And I think you're also seeing the weird effects that 5G has on other animals, which can affect ecosystems. So this is one of those things where like the conspiracy theorists are probably right, which is going to be very interesting to see as it plays out.
I
Factualists.
think they should be called conspiracy facts because everything that the health and safety people are saying is factual, and a lot of the things that you're hearing from industry is not factual. So I don't think that they're conspiracy theories, and I also don't think that they're saying it's going to harm everyone. The latest good study that was done came out of Yale 2020. You look up Yale 2020 cell phone radiation and then add DNA. This is the first study that looks at genetics, cell phone radiation, and cancer. And what it found, if you happen to have 10 genes, you're more likely to get a brain tumor from using your cell phone. So it might not affect everyone in the same way, just like COVID and just like everything. But
Well,
it's
the
certainly
sample size of
evidence.
these university studies are really not significant, anyways. But if you type
Yale's not
in
a
just
significant study. Yale's not a significant study, sir.
the
Excuse me.
Yale, the studies which they use, the sample size which they use. If you can quote the sample size, how many records they have used, that's what defined the significance of a study, not a university brand. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, we're definitely have a significant cohort to add to this because most of the 5G towers are being placed near schools, and that was, I mean, we watched that on the news last year during the pandemic. That was why all the conspiracy theorists thought that they were literally trying to harm kids. It's because the state property is where those towers were going up, mainly because they needed good signal strength for what they were doing in the schools. But Tyler, I tweeted you a couple of the articles that kind of support that, the study stuff that they were doing.
I imagine they might be going up on schools because it's easier for them to. It's living where I do. I've gotten into this topic a little bit with people putting up radio towers because here the companies have to pay private landowners, like individuals who own land, to put up towers, and there's a huge complication with that. I'm sure there's probably some legal benefit to doing it on school properties in terms of the expediency. You can get 1,000 of them done simultaneously with a school district, and you're like, hey, can we put these up? You have 1,000 different locations. Can we use all, half of them right now, rather than going to individual every time you have to use separate individuals? It's a separate negotiation, all kinds of unique different problems. You now have to have a management system for all the different stakeholders of all the different lands that you do this on, or you find somebody who has lots of pockets of land all over a geography, kind of like a school district or a system does. And so I imagine it's more of a legal thing. It's not that you see what I'm saying, but
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. I actually was approached by a telecom company to put towers up on the property that I owned, and interestingly enough, when you take a look at the contracts, there's clauses in there, and you're right. If you had to do this with every single individual entity group, there would be a lot of court cases because in the fine print in some of these contracts, it shows that if the land that they use the towers on, you're just basically leasing them the land. But because they control what happens on that piece of property, there are laws in the United States that say that whoever manages that property for 7 straight years, which you as a property owner are not allowed to go into, right? They block that area off.
right, then
They
they own
actually
it.
become owners
That's
of the
right.
land.
Same in Thailand. Yeah, I'll pipe in on both the legal. There's a bunch of legal negotiations that would go on there, including the EIR, you know, environmental impact reports for every individual negotiation, as you're saying, and also schools would be a primary target because they own huge plots of land and they're run by, if you think about it, it's the Peter principle. It's teachers coming up through principals through everything else. And at least in California where I am, they're some of the biggest landowners. So as you said, it's one negotiation up front. And honestly, if you look at how many Coke machines and everything else in those contracts, they don't seem to be super savvy about what they're putting on their land. So totally agree with what you guys are saying.
What this
This
all
this
really
this is
goes back to is the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which essentially says we as citizens don't get to control where cell towers are placed, regardless of health or environmental concerns. And this was signed into law by a very important environmentalist, Al Gore, who now also happens to be a board member of Apple. Coincidence? I don't know. I just think that we need to regulate this a lot more than we are, because in every cell phone manual right now, it says in fine print, keep the cell phone away from your body a certain distance. And then when cities like San Francisco want to take that information and make it a little bit bigger print, not super tiny fine print, they get sued saying it goes against the freedom of speech of these corporations. It's backwards. It's all bananas. And we really need to think a lot more about this issue moving forward. Well, where I live, we have little spotty Verizon service right in my immediate area, and I remember speaking to the head of Verizon California, this was over a decade ago, and she told me, he said, we want to put more towers there, but the homeowners association in the area doesn't want it because of the aesthetics. They don't even carefully disguise it as a palm tree, so we haven't been able to put in enough towers. So there must be some ability for local government to stop the towers from going in.
So the problem here is the science, the quality of science, and how lax our regulatory system works. When you get a certain swing, and I'll just say to the right in DC, you get a complete disarming of what we shouldn't even be calling regulations. We should be calling them safety measures, because a lot of what these commissions are responsible for is ensuring safety. And telecommunications is one area. Food and chemicals is another area. And to give Al Gore a positive pop, Kevin, I understand what you're saying in terms of, hey, maybe something's going on. But I think in history, we might be looking back at '92 and Gore losing in the primary to Clinton from the climate perspective as being kind of a bummer, because things could be maybe been on a different trajectory. But
Ted
Kevin,
Olson,
you bring up a
that a
lot of
trip?
good points, lots of them, and we need to get more information about some of the some of this information. Absolutely out there. I just
For me, I mean, the level of lack of scientific literacy on this is just kind of stunning. And like our devices they're just like eons more different than they were, years past. And I should say too, like just from an ethics standpoint, like I know Ajit Pai, who's a former FCC commissioner, and like you should not be able to be a FCC commissioner and deal with these like health issues and then like run immediately and make millions of dollars in the private sector. Like it's pretty fucked up and gross. And we would not tolerate it. I mean, the FDA, there was a scandal over the Sackler family with the opioids hiring the FDA head after he was approving all of their drugs, sort of rubber stamping it. There was a scandal over that. I think it's the same sort of thing here on these kind of issues. And I think good on the DC Circuit Court, which by the way I should say is a conservative court. Like this is not like a liberal court that's coming to this conclusion that there's a responsibility to actually do the science and check that things are actually working. So I think this is more less a right left issue and more like a actually do the job that the regulatory bodies are supposed to do rather than just rubber stamp things for industry.
Well, Charles, you have to be, I'm sure you're well aware that this revolving door between government and the private sector, unfortunately, has been going on for a long time. This is not just one or two examples. You could look at like Billy Townsend being chairman of the House committee that regulate pharmaceuticals, and then he goes to work for the pharmaceutical lobby at the head of it, for $1 million a year. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
this stuff
shouldn't be
goes on.
allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. I mean,
I
I
mean,
know
like,
that there are, rights issues here in the First Amendment. It should certainly, like, my grandfather was invited to be on the board of General Atomics after being a rear admiral, and he thought it was unconscionable. He thought it was the wrong thing to do to take his military service and cash in. And I think we were a better country when we had a sense of limitations, not just from a legal perspective, but mores. Like we should not tolerate this kind of thing going forward.
didn't Obama, correct me, didn't Obama make the people he hired in high level positions sign an agreement that they wouldn't do that for
Yeah,
5 years or something?
everybody signs the agreement, but then nobody implements the agreement. And I think this is really a mores question. Like this should be something where like I mean, I tell people all the time when I do stuff in DC, like, I will not work with people that do the revolving door thing. I don't think it's ethical. I don't want to be around it. And by the way, I think it makes for bad public policy. Like, not just like it's bad for the overall ecosystem when you're just hiring people right out of government. It's just not, it doesn't actually achieve what the corporation thinks it's going to achieve anyway, because it creates this sort of bad taste in people's mouth, and that can sully the reputation of the brand. So, and I think too, like, if you look at Obama said in his book, his biggest regret is essentially that he let the tech companies have their way with the country. And, Obama himself went and cashed in with this Netflix deal, which is, I think, unconscionable. It sort of shouldn't be allowed.
Okay. Next headlines here. We've got this one from Jason in the audience that the U.S., as he mentioned, this one, U.S. developing wearable radio frequency weapon sensor. So they can know when they're being hit by Havana syndrome, right? The U.S. Department of
Correct.
Defense is looking to develop a low-cost, low-weight, wearable, directed pulse energy weapon sensor designed to detect and document exposure of personnel to injurious levels of radio frequency energy. The wearable radio...
All these things are lining up in a weird way, huh, Tyler?
It's... at least we got the defensive part down. The wearable radio frequency weapon exposure detector program comes in the wake of recent reports of alleged microwave attacks that are thought by some to potentially be the cause behind mysterious illness in U.S. personnel, such as the widely reported symptoms experienced by U.S. embassy personnel in Cuba. The so-called Havana syndrome reportedly caused such symptoms as headaches, loss of hearing and balance, and in some cases, some form of brain injuries. So
I'm going to say this one more time for those in the back. They're using RF to do radio ablation of brain cancer.
It's very obvious what the Chinese are doing and the Russians have been doing, which is they are trying to decrease the quality and type of people who go into the foreign service. And because they do not want U.S. diplomats and, let's be honest, spies operating out of these embassies. And so they are increasing the human costs. And this, you can see this from them hacking, the OPM files. I mean, they don't want U.S. personnel in their countries or in allied countries. That's sort of how it's going to go down. And I think that we should retaliate in kind by removing a lot of their people from the U.S.
Whoever to be the...
Tyler,
Yeah.
John Madison is in the audience.
Okay.
John, raise your hand.
I'll get him. So, let me get into the next headline here. Well, a lot of people down here. Hey, Vinay, you made it.
Hey, Vinay, are you late for class?
Yeah, he's late for class, and we get Mengdi up
He
here.
was checking out land in Moldova.
Setting up his subway.
No, Moldova's gone. I'm looking at a couple of new countries. I'll let you guys know I'm wrecking them.
Okay. A wearable RF detector to signal and document exposure to injurious levels of RF energy will allow personnel to take timely and appropriate protective measures, enable confident diagnosis of RF exposure injury, and serve as a critical intelligence resource for defining current battlefield threats, says the DoD.
Just put that helmet on. Everyone's going to be walking around with the protective helmet.
Whoever comes up with the VR with a Faraday cage in it is going to be a billionaire.
Exactly.
The next one is from Manaz, who's listening in the audience. Hello, Manaz. And this one is, the headline reads, "The Joker virus has returned to Android. It empties your bank account without you noticing it." And the Joker virus, it is hidden in these apps on the Google Play Store. And which apps exactly? Well, I just tweeted this out to the Tech News Twitter account so you can see which apps. And hopefully you don't have these apps. The Joker malware became famous in 2017 for infecting and robbing its victims by hiding in different applications. Since then, the Google Play Store Defense Systems has removed about 1,700 apps with the Joker malware before they were downloaded by users. In September 2020, the Joker virus was found in 24 Android applications that registered more than 500,000 downloads before it being removed. And which apps Here they are. In which Android apps would the Joker virus be? The harmful applications that the Google Play Store eliminating after detecting the Joker virus are called Auxiliary Message, Element Scanner, Fast Magic SMS, Free Cam Scanner, Go Messages, Super Message, Super SMS, and Travel Wallpapers. So thank you for that one, Manaz. The next one's from Lucia, who's also listening. She sends in this headline that researchers work to integrate psychotic drug and music therapies using tech by combining the two. Predates even the 1960s and is an ancient practice in many cultures of combining music and psychedelics. In case you missed it, psychedelics are having a moment. Again, this time around, though it seems a lot less trippy than it was in the 60s, the psychedelic renaissance is often talked up by people in the tech sector, many of whom are actually interested in using these substances as performance enhancers. And music, turns out, it's also a big part of the new psychedelic scene too. It's just that the volume is lower. We're likely to hear more about the importance of the background score, though, thanks to several new tech companies that are designing music to help you get the most out of your experience. One well-known company is Wave Paths, a British platform that offers music streams for different therapeutic intentions, including meditation, stress reduction, and altered states of consciousness. And closer to home, a collaboration between MindCure, a Vancouver psychedelic therapy software company, and Lucid, a Toronto digital music therapy platform, might start to edge music back towards the center of the conversation about psychedelic experience. Here's the quote. If you look at the historical and cultural practice of these medicines, you'll see that the music has been a part of the tradition since the beginning of time, says Kelsey Ramsden, the co-founder and CEO of MindCure. It's only that we're returning to utilizing this medicine in a clinical setting that the music component has become recognized again as an important part of the entire healing process. Makes sense. Okay. And the next headline is from Willie, who joins us regularly in the audience. And he says in his tweet, as predicted on tech news around the world, platforms monetize influencer economy. And the headline from TechCrunch today says TikTok expands Shopify partnership, pilots TikTok shopping in the US, UK, and Canada. So here comes TikTok shopping. TikTok is moving into e-commerce. The company announced this morning an expanded partnership with e-commerce platform Shopify, as well as pilot tests in the US, UK, and Canada. I told you. Did I not tell you? I told you. When did I tell you? I told you many times. Like every other day for about 4 months. About 5 months ago.
Hey Tyler, without making you feel uncomfortable, when did you get in on Shopify?
About a year ago.
It's a beautiful chart, man. I haven't seen one like that in a long
It's a
time.
good one, yeah. So we got a bunch more headlines here. But I doubled down on Shopify Live when we did the live stream with the Google I/O event back in June, when they announced Shopify as their
Facebook.
No, Google.
Okay.
It was a Google I/O event when they showed YouTube partnering with Shopify. And I said at the time, I said before the event, I'm going to throw a whole bunch more into Shopify. And when I said, oh, buy Shopify, I said, oh, I already own Shopify, but I need to buy more. So anyway, brace for new crop diseases steered by climate change, study says. And this one just came in from Vinay. The results suggest that India will see a substantial decrease in the impact of crop pathogens, but high temperatures could cause crops to fail. A new study that looks at climate change models has predicted with the rising temperatures, the burden of crop diseases will increase in some parts of the world and fall in others. The team adds that new diseases are also likely to arrive due to increased international trade. Countries in the northern hemisphere, particularly in Europe, China, and central to the eastern U.S., were found to be vulnerable, while much of Brazil, India, and Southeast Asia was predicted to see a decline in crop diseases. Let me read that again for you so you know where to fucking move when the apocalypse really starts heating up. Countries in Northern Hemisphere, particularly in Europe, China, and the central to eastern U.S. were found to be vulnerable to increased crop failure and diseases. However, much of Brazil, India, and Southeast Asia, hello from Thailand, was predicted to see a decline and a decrease in crop diseases because we're going to get more water. So,
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing from India. I know it was on that list, but please, if any of you are thinking moving to this country, do not. If you want to take a few million people from India, we've got plenty to spare. Thank you.
a few 100 million. So, yeah, these are all factors to include when you start considering where your next location will be. So thank you for that, Vinay. The next one is from Cheryl, which says Instagram will launch advertising on its shop feature globally. The Facebook-owned company Instagram said on August 24th, that's today, as it seeks to earn more money from brands hoping to reach new customers through e-commerce on Instagram. I told you, it's all coming really fast now. You can actually see the waves over the horizon now. The tsunami of e-commerceification of social media is now within view and quickly rushing up to the shore. So the next one is Taiwan seeks again to reassure U.S. over tackling chip shortage. The microcontroller units commonly used for auto chips production rose 60% in the first half. New York Times says they still live in the shadow of Theranos' Elizabeth Holmes. Female entrepreneurs said they were constantly compared to Mrs. Holmes, the disgraced founder of Theranos, who faces trial soon. And that's a really interesting point because this psychopath, Elizabeth Holmes, was a absolute fraud, one of the biggest frauds in Silicon Valley history. And it's incredibly regrettable that she happened to be female because now she has added an additional shackle or burden to every female entrepreneur. And there was another one besides Elizabeth Holmes. That Charles, which was the other company of the med tech?
Well, Ubiome is the big one.
Ubiome, thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
And
look, it was pretty obvious. Like, I mean, look, we investors are not like a difficult bunch. Like, we pattern seek. And in the case of Elizabeth Holmes, at that time, there were three female co founders of unicorns in the country, and the other two were married to their co founders. And then there was Elizabeth Holmes, who essentially stole Steve Jobs' look, faked her voice, and I mean, there was just so many things wrong with that. And yet, if you said anything, as many of us did, about her being a fraud or a faker, we were called out as sexist. So, one of the problems is it sort of cuts both ways. That I remember at the time, and back when I had Twitter, you could see this where I called her out for being full of shit on various things, and that was harped upon. I mean, that was attacked when that happened, and there's no like better bureau of VC where Mark Andreessen was an investor in Ubiome. His wife wrote a profile praising Elizabeth Holmes, and I don't know, where's the accountability for that? Like, where's my bad? I fucked up. Like, so sorry for that. And there's none of that. The Ubiome founders are on the run. Like, nobody even knows where they actually are. So it's kind of crazy. So when these female entrepreneurs want to publicly call out these frauds and not just raise money, because they're a woman, like tech doesn't care if you're an Oompa Loompa or a woman or black or brown or Martian. Like, it just doesn't care. And people who say, it's like very hard to raise money. I mean, it's hard to raise money for a lot of people. I mean, try being try being a Trumpist who support, in Silicon Valley trying to raise money.
that would
There are
be
other pots of money.
that would be generally that would put you at a severe disadvantage in unless it basically limits your investor pool to a notable subsection of investors.
Right, and should just say too, like Silicon Valley is learning the other side of this, which is a lot of their companies are starting to get blacklisted as security reviews are being done, because a lot of the times they're not as careful with the types of investors that they have in, so they can't be trusted with a lot of USG contracting, which is where a lot of the government sector is buying more and more technology. So these things kind of like have a turn here and there, but I do think people need to be much more. There should be a lot more discussion about how to actually like self-regulate, or the government will come in and regulate these things for us. And I think that's pretty likely to happen in the not too distant future. I mean, the Holmes thing went on for years, and people who talked about it were attacked viciously. It's really a case study in like and how there's a conspiracy of silence around calling out other frauds. And there, as we well know, there are lots of frauds in Silicon Valley that are not publicly outed, and that's a real problem.
So
So
You guys
I
are not
agree
saying that
with
there's only.
most of what you've said, Charles. The only piece that I would push back on is that tech doesn't care about, one's background. I think that, unconscious bias, we all have it. And, when we look at the percentage of people from various demographics who actually get funded in the tech space, that alone would suggest that there is something at play. Um, I'd like to, Tyler, can you invite Tina Opie in? She's a professor at Babson, and it's the middle of the day for her and it's midnight for me. So
okay.
I would imagine that Tina could be much more articulate around this.
No, I can be articulate on that. I 100% agree with you. In the Valley, white males are highly preferred out of Stanford, and that's just a known bias. But the rest of what Charles said is correct. And there is a silence culture. There are a lot of frauds, big frauds that are really damaging, still going on. But a lot of that money does follow the standard white male or the herd mentality, which ahead of you was a standard white male, like the Theranos Elizabeth
Well,
Holmes staff.
I
Yeah,
would say it slightly differently,
Yeah.
which is I would say it has the copy cutter Stanford mafia model, which is like a specific type of white male. I mean, you try to get funded as somebody
correct.
from Oklahoma or Texas or any of these places. Now, I actually kind of like the discrimination that Silicon Valley does because, I started Clearview with an Australian, dropout, half Vietnamese, half Australian redneck guy. And like I've started a number of companies with neglected talent, and I actually like making those kind of investments. But the Stanford Mafia is very, very real, and I think it's a real problem. And I think people sort of racialize a lot of these issues when they should really be looking at these networks because that's
They're,
where
they're class issues.
they're class issues as well too.
But race and class
Yeah.
often
Yeah.
intersect, right? So I think for most people, it's hard to separate where one ends and the other begins. Tyler, Tina has raised her hand. If you could just bring her up, I'm sure she has a strong
yes,
point of view
thank you.
around this.
Yeah, and to me is also if you look at even you Lakeisha, we talk about it in the digital inclusion room. Even the successful tech African unicorns or businesses, if you look at them, they all have connections with Silicon Valley, or even they are Europeans or Americans or Chinese who are actually finding business in Africa that get the funding. Forget about being, Africa women. We all scramble to get any kind of seed funding, but it's just is amazing if you see the disparity. And now this is gonna even make it worse for, women funding and then Africa women funding. I can imagine how it's gonna be horrible.
Hi, if may I say something? Tyler, is that okay? This is
Yeah,
Tina Opie.
we don't have a. It's an open mic
We
format
just
here,
jump
Tina. Go
in,
ahead.
yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure since I've been in the room a few times, but not on a regular basis, so I didn't want to violate any
No
norms.
problem.
I think yes, so I think it's really important to undergird some of the points that Lakeisha and Mesere and Jennifer just shared. And I think the reason why I had such a strong reaction to some of the comments that Charles was making was because perhaps, think about then how you would explain the disparities that are in Silicon Valley. And there, I look at this from a levels of analysis perspective. So there's the individual, there's interpersonal, and then there's systemic.
And oftentimes there are individual variables that are used to explain why there are such systemic disparities, such as, well, this person was not qualified or this person didn't have the experience. I think we need to dig a bit deeper and look at some of the systemic issues. And someone's offered networks as an example. So I've studied networks. I looked at this, and networks tend to be homophilous, which birds of a feather flock together. People network with people who are often like them. And so if you have people who are in positions of power, they will often pull in people like them who may also have power or similar in some way, shape, or fashion. And so what you see is power hierarchies replicating themselves. This does not mean that it's necessarily intentional. It does not mean that someone is nefarious in their intent. But what it does mean is I think we have to be very careful when we say things like Silicon Valley does not care about your color or you could be whatever. Because if you look at the systemic level, and if you apply that statement and from a systemic viewpoint, then what are the other reasons? If your color or your race, et cetera, is not at issue, how do you explain the disparities? And it often collapses to a perception that, well, that's because they're not qualified. As a professor, I've heard that. I'm sorry, John, do you mind muting your mic? I'm getting a lot of feedback. So, th-
Tyler,
thank you. So as a professor, when we're recruiting faculty, I often hear, well, we can't find them. Well, that's because you're looking in places where your network has often looked. And until, if and only, I think we have to be willing to say, okay, I strongly disagree with everything that Tina is saying, but put that to the, what if what I'm saying is true? How would you go about what you're doing in your daily life differently from an individual, interpersonal, and systemic level? So Lakeisha, I hope that was okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. I can't I'm not at my peak past 10 p.m. Full disclosure.
It's getting late here in Thailand. I think we as geek, I think geeks are quite an encouraging, accepting bunch, and I think Can I jump in, Tyler, before you fold that? I feel like you're going to fold that up, but I just want to jump in. okay, Tina, sure. you're exactly right. And carry that over one more step, which is that's where the biases in AI come from. The algorithms aren't designed to be biased, but because they are based on historical patterns and practices, such as this, what was successful for this company in the past, that's what's going to be built in as to what we're looking for, which tends to be those things. And we've discussed this before. So just going down those paths. And then as a side note, I'm actually a board advisor to a company that is trying to evaluate entrepreneurs and their qualifications in an unbiased manner in a direct attempt to show VCs their qualities and bring more non-white, basically bring more just divergent groups to people because these people are less less connected to the funding, et cetera, or maybe overlooked for a variety of reasons. So it's a big area, and you actually, if you look around in Clubhouse, you'll see a ton of rooms that used to be about addressing or talking about this bias in different ways. So yeah.
I should say too, though. I mean, I think we should be focusing more on the networks question. I mean, there are many, many examples of people from flyover country. I mean, we're talking about a very niche part of the overall ecosystem that's in the business world to begin with, and I think it's I mean, look, I've had people tell me to my face in Silicon Valley at major funds that that they would not back my companies, even though they were doing quite well, because I had supported Donald Trump for president. I've had friends who've been fired from major companies because they backed Donald Trump for president. Whether you agree with Trump or don't, and I should say, like, I'm very happy President Biden is president now. Sort of missed that one. Like, there is a network effect of people backing each other that is quite intense. And there are other pools of capital in this country or in the U.S. Beyond just the Silicon Valley capital world. And I think one of the things that could be done is a lot of institutions, they can pressure this on the LP side. They can pressure it in other ways as well. But in the final analysis, the technology still has to work. And in the case of Ubiome or in the case of Theranos, there were quite a number of people who said this technology does not work. And I think of all the people out there who actually work in this space, and they don't get funding because and their technology may well work. in the case of facial recognition, we had a number of tech companies say to us, "Oh, I invested in the Chinese version of this. I don't think America should have this technology." And like my view in general is that Silicon Valley does not represent the United States of America, nor should we pretend that it does. And increasingly, people are going to have to build their own networks. I've definitely built my own network across the United States, and you're going to have to kind of do that if you can't keep asking to sit at a table that doesn't want you there. And
Alistair,
that's
I
an unfortunate thing.
1000% agree. Silicon Valley is a piece of, I mean, it's got a lot of power and people follow it, and it is such a microcosm. So everything you're saying about the network is correct. And if you look at Theranos, that is exactly what happened. That was no one did any due diligence there. It was all follow the leader, right? So it was one guy, I know him. Oh no, fear syndrome, I'm going to be left out. So 1000% agree on that. And honestly, I find it kind of humorous that you got turned down for being a Trump supporter because I know so many closet. I personally
Oh yeah, there's a lot
didn't
of
vote for Trump.
closet
There's so
people
many
there
closet
too,
people there
for
that,
sure.
yeah.
Yep.
So I just think it's hilarious, especially because they're not looking at the technology. And again, both Theranos and Ubiome were huge examples of that. They didn't even turn over. It was so blatantly fraudulent in front of them, right? Or I don't know as much about Ubiome, but definitely about Theranos. And
I mean, the
personally,
Ubiome thing
I've
was
worked at companies that did this, right? So I was in the thick of it, and it's
Yeah, the Ubiome
Yeah.
thing was hilarious because we all looked at this company, right, and we're like, this doesn't work. And we had lots and lots of people, but there was a sort of fashionable thing to be for it. And I do think there is something to be said for all these VCs being lemmings that sort of just go off the cliff together. And I have strongly encouraged people, rather than investing in buying another house or buying, maybe build your own networks, to do your own investing and your own due diligence, have your own investing clubs. I mean, that's how a lot of things started. I mean, Uber is a prime example of that. There were lots of people that were not in the traditional group that got together and put some money into Uber. I mean, so there's lots of examples of people sort of building parallel infrastructure. And I think we're starting to see that the tech thing may have started as a Stanford phenomenon, but as we see with tech news around the world, it's becoming an international thing. I mean, it's I think we are kidding ourselves though if we expect Silicon Valley to actually be representative of the larger world. It sort of can't be.
Or that there's a single place to operate that network, right? Networks don't have, by definition, obvious centers. Although we can see the points of nucleation that they originated with. And it's important to understand what the way that you get around networks is by focusing on these decentralized technologies that allow you to spontaneously form alternative networks without the high friction costs which the networks that you're trying to displace had to deal with.
Yeah, and people tend to forget that Home's initial investors were family connections. So, like, it was Tim Draper, who was the dad of her childhood friend and former neighbor, Victor Palmieri, who was her dad's longtime friend. So she raised $6 million from those two, and then Rupert Murdoch, $125 million, and he was a family connection. So inherently, there is like major class and network problems in Silicon Valley. But I also agree with Andy that we can place hope into decentralization and other means to sort of bring inclusivity into investments in Silicon Valley. Okay, here we go. We got a few here to run through. The first one is CIA meeting with Taliban revealed as, and it was the head of the CIA, met with the Taliban as U.S. allies press for evacuation extension. Spy chief met co-founder of Islamist group in Kabul, while G7 leaders seek more time to help Afghans escape. And the next one from Katerina says that Prozac changes fat composition of the brain. Prozac reduced polyunsaturated fat acid lipid concentrations in the brains of juvenile macaque monkeys. And the next one's from Cheryl, that from Wired, and it starts with a quote which says, "Maybe instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars adding lanes, we could be spending money buying computers for employers." And the story is about the pandemic put an end to rush hour, what happens now? And the idea is if we're not commuting to the office as we used to, by buying computers, and it can fix the traffic problem, the rush hour traffic in major cities. And then the next one is from Evan on a related point, that Google Maps update disables your navigation unless you enable data collection. Google Maps has become a must-have navigation app for millions of drivers, and it's all because it provides incredibly accurate traffic. But Google uses your and other people's navigation data to improve maps for everyone. As you navigate, Google collects details such as GPS location and route you took. This data may be used to make information, including real-time conditions and disruptions, blah, blah, blah. And Google Maps Update now disables navigation unless you enable data collection. Scientists discover small proteins that regulate the aging process. The attachment of the small protein ubiquitin to other proteins requires numerous biological processes, including signal transduction and etc. So just sent that one to the Tech News Twitter account. Thank you, Katarina, for that one. And how about this one? How music strengthens the brain. Learning music can help fortify neural pathways associated with cognitive function and could help to stave off dementia, researchers report. So why are musicians so fucking crazy is my question. So then the next one is eyes provide peak at Alzheimer's disease risk. The presence of amyloid beta deposits in the retina correlated with cerebral amyloid levels in those with Alzheimer's disease. And the effect of eddy killing in oceans is no longer a matter of guesswork. Ocean currents, propelled by kinetic energy from the wind, are the great moderators of our climate by transforming heat from the equator to the polar caps. And what else do we have here? Here we go. Cheryl sent in this one, that llama antibodies could soon be playing a role in the global fight against COVID-19 if clinical trials begin being conducted in a Belgian biomedical startup live up to their early promise. We can all expect doses of llama antibodies. Fantastic. And Evan sent in this one, that Americans will be spending a whole lot more on tech this year in the forms of smartphones, laptops, televisions, smart home devices, health, fitness tech, wireless earbuds, gaming consoles, etc. And the question is, how much more will Americans spend in 2021? And this gives us a fantastic opportunity to play our favorite new game, Tech News Jeopardy. So the question is, how much will Americans spend in tech in 2021? How many billion will Americans spend on tech in 2021?
Wait, so it's not percentage increase. It's like an actual...
Correct. An actual number.
Tech device or tech setup?
No. We could you could do a percentage also. I know both. The total number in dollars or the percent increase.
I'm going to say about $500 billion, close to $1 trillion.
You cheated, Vinay. $487 billion, which is a 7.5% increase.
No, because I knew last year's number, so I didn't know this year's, but I knew it was about 380 something last year. I remember reading it.
So the next one is from the Hindu.
What? So was that excluding B2B, that figure?
Yes.
It's just B2C only? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this
Because it would have been in the trillions if it was including B2B.
And it doesn't bake in the VR and stuff like that. That's going to obviously add rocket fuel.
Time to talk about India's new breed of hobby tech and culture tech platforms. India's folk artists have turned online to teach art forms such as Kalamakari?
Macarena?
No. Kalamakari, Kavad, Fad, and Madhubani paintings. We chat with the artists as well as platforms that are enabling all of these artists, cultural artists in India, now getting online and digitizing. as now India's really getting into the next chapter of tech. And Rhonda sends in this one from Fast Company about the a really fantastic mask. How a costume designer for Batman and Black Panther created the ultimate mask. A mask that protects against COVID and makes you look like a superhero. And you have to see it. It looks really cool. The next one, also from Rhonda, that AMC Theaters, the stock price jumped 7% after the Pfizer vaccine gets full FDA approval. AMC got a shot in the arm on Monday, seeing its share price jump 7% on the same day Pfizer's vaccine was fully approved by the FDA. And Waymo is back in the news. Waymo is 99% of the way to self-driving cars. The last 1% is the hardest. And it lost its CEO and is still stymied by traffic cones. Well, what's taking so long is the headline that we just tweeted out. Thank you, Evan, for that one. Back on COVID, ultra-vaxxed Israel is a dire warning to America because they're all double vaxxed, and yet now they've got a growing case of Delta. And that just goes to show you just how crazy Delta is. It's a whole different animal. And there seems to be a whole lot of confusion in the anti-vax rooms here in Clubhouse as to why the CDC and Fauci say one thing 2 years ago, and now he says something different. And the short answer is because there's variations of the virus that are very, 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 very different than 2 years ago. They do things now to people that they didn't do in the previous variations. That's why you're getting different answers from the same people over time. And you should have the critical thinking skills to embrace that reality. And just because they're giving different information over time, because the virus itself is changing and evolving. So the answers and the facts and the figures and the data is also evolving. And that's an okay thing. It doesn't mean they were wrong or they have some crazy plan to put chips in your body and, lower the population. It just means that the virus is evolving. The whole field is moving. Does it make sense? Okay, good. So the next
Sort of.
headline is, are people back to attending events? Like AMC movie theaters. The San Francisco Chronicle says, are people in San Francisco back to attending events? Here's how San Francisco compares to LA. Data on ticket sales and event attendance shows San Francisco lagging behind LA on returning to events, with one notable exception, the San Francisco Pride Parade.
It's because you can get beat up on your way anywhere in San Francisco.
And Dr. Fran sends in this one that a CEO of a tech company is experimenting with 1 year in the metaverse. The future of business is in the metaverse, he says, and we want to explore every angle of its use for workplace collaboration and for the future. So the boss is going to spend a year in the metaverse. And speaking of which, the BBC is reporting that VR helps Indians and Pakistanis visit their lost homes. Indians and Pakistanis who fled their homes during partition when the border was drawn between Pakistan and India. Some people were caught on the wrong side of the border. And now VR is helping them see their long lost homes. They can now revisit their childhoods virtually. And Tina sends in this one from the World Economic Forum that the Clean Currents Coalition is a mission to clean up the world's rivers using scientific solutions to address the problem of plastic waste in waterways around the world. 8 amazing solutions to stop plastic flowing into the world's waterways. So we just tweeted that out. And then someone named Jamie Farrelly, who's listening, sends in this one that soon the Afghanistan flag emoji inside of your iPhone could be changed to the Taliban flag. And since emojis don't have any concept of versions, the below could display hearts and the Taliban flag in the near future. Interesting read. With an uncertain and ongoing situation in Afghanistan right now, one question that arises with consistency at times like this relates to the flag. If the flag of Afghanistan changes as the Taliban is accepted as the in their takeover.
Well, A
Does,
lot
d-
of
d-
social media people, the Afghan people here, really hate Afghan Taliban flag, and they would just lose all of their social media users if they bring up that flag.
The next article is from Willie. It's about Waymo again. Waymo starts offering autonomous taxi rides in San Francisco. Not an easy city to drive a taxi, even as a human, let alone autonomously with no one in the driver's seat. So here comes Waymo has now gone from where were they in Arizona? Flagstaff? No, what was the other city they were in? And where it was a much easier city to drive in. San Francisco isn't the world's hardest city to drive in, but it's
Phoenix. They were in Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah. So now Waymo is on the streets of San Francisco. A whole new level of difficulty for sure. The next one is from The Atlantic, from our friend David Crace, who listens in, and it says, people like malls. Amazon appears to have discovered the latest, freest shopping is picking stuff up in person. And since 2005, Amazon has changed how virtually every American shops. And back then, in February of 2005, the company launched Prime, the first of its kind, lightning fast subscription delivery service that now has an estimated 147 million members. That's half of America, basically, in the United States. Holy shit. Wow. Along the way, Amazon invented its own shopping holiday. Let's get to the meat of the article, though. For anyone who's even casually followed the flagging fortunes of America's department stores over the last 15 years, this might strike you as counterintuitive that Amazon is now getting into physical retail stores, especially during a pandemic when online shopping has grown explosively and millions of people have gotten used to ordering even their groceries on the internet. Why would the world's most powerful retailer snap up expansive brick and mortar storefronts that have long been a financial albatross for many of its competitors? But the more parts of our lives move online, the clearer it becomes that some things are just better done in person, both logistically and spiritually. Amazon's continued creep into in-person shopping is just the most recent evidence that America is headed for a digital shakeout.
So when in about 2005, I went to Taiwan and I picked up a book called China Inc. And they really talked about how Walmart sees themselves as a shipping company. They consider
Yeah.
themselves a shipping company where you come and pick up the package at a Walmart because that's how they view themselves.
Yes.
Now, Amazon is also a shipping company, but what's different about their model, if they pull off this Walmart thinks they're a shipping company model, is that they have the data that Walmart never had, right? Like, I call it the shoemaker's dilemma. Like, if you make shoes, your biggest trouble is what size to order, how many to order, where do they go? That's what Amazon has and can enable because likely it's going to be your subscription type items that they're going to keep in stock all the time. They're going to know local demographic trends. They're going to be able to pull off a store better than anybody's ever pulled off a store.
Okay.
Ask honestly if you'd trust Amazon or the federal government with your health data. Ask yourself that question honestly, Chris. And it's pretty obvious that you'd trust Amazon more, isn't it? And that's obviously
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember a single Amazon credit card breach. I don't know if anybody can. I'm not. That's not a challenge. I just don't remember hearing it ever.
Well, that's
I'm
because
frankly afraid of them. Like
they
they're more
already know that the hacker was planning to hack them with all that data.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they give briefings. They give briefings to the CIA, and not the other way around. Like that kind of tells me everything I need to know.
They knew that the hacker was planning to hack them before that hacker even thought of hacking them with all the data that
The
Amazon
Bloomberg
has.
article makes sense now. It's pretty much they were just saying, "Hey guys, it wasn't China. It was actually us."
So,
You know, the thing about Amazon, I live around the corner from one of these new fresh stores, right? With they have all the cameras everywhere, and I just go in and grab the food and I take it out. And the biggest inconvenience is that I can't actually take the security guards make me put my scooter on the side so that I can't do my preferred way of grabbing stuff and going. But I tell you, it's a massively changed my shopping habits because I literally can go around the corner and get something fresh anytime that I need it. I just only wish it was 24 hours because I could just get my fresh food exactly when I need to cook it.
Not even have to have a fridge. Maybe reclaim that space.
Almost, yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, we've got a bunch here. The BSF opens fire at drone in Jammu's Arnia sector. Drones have repeatedly been spotted in the region since June 27th, when they were used to target the Indian Air Force Base in Jammu with explosives. The explosive left 2 personnel injured. The Border Security Force, BSF, Indian Border Security Force, early on Monday fired at a flying object along the Indo-Pakistan international border in Arnia section of the Jammu district. The Indian spokesperson said today morning, that's a weird Englishism. This morning at around 5:30 a.m., a blinking red and yellow light in the sky was observed by our forward troops in the sector near the border. Our troops immediately fired 25 LMG rounds at the flying object, due to which it gained some height and went towards the Pakistani side. The area is being searched with help of police, and the area is being scanned by security forces, but nothing has been found so far. On July 24, Jammu and Kashmir police claimed they shot down a Pakistani drone carrying a 5-kilogram improvised explosive device in the Kanachak area of the sector. Kanachak is a border area in the Jammu district. Drones have repeatedly been spotted in the region since June 27 when they were used to target the. The attack was first such instance of suspected Pakistan-based terrorists deploying unmanned aerial vehicles to strike at vital installations in India. The National Investigation Agency is investigating the case. Jammu and Kashmir police said the drones come from across the border, from Pakistan. Over 350 drones have been sighted along the border with Pakistan since 2019. Militarized drones, watch out for a huge swarm.
This is going to be a huge mess. I mean,
coming your way soon.
And Tyler, there's a huge opportunity and lots of investment happening in anti-drone technology. Massive amount of both defense money investment, and even a couple of the VCs are getting in on the act now. It's interesting.
Well, the EMP stuff really works, and you can also use satellites to hit them out of the sky.
Charles, but these are really not that aerial drones, sophisticated drones. These are more like a pizza delivery drones carrying just 5 kg of RDX and operated by like a local villager terrorist groups and that sort of stuff. So it's like more up advanced.
I've seen Coke cans hit from space, just to be like clear about it. So I think you're going to start to see a lot more satellite detection of these things, even on a granular level. So yeah, I mean, you're right, of course, which is that they're cheap. They're a cheap solution to the problem. I think the Turks are also developing a lot of these drones these days, which they're selling around, which is kind of interesting.
I think Turkey also have anti-drone technology already.
So Israel is developing a good anti-drone tech, and Turkey is offensive drone. Turkey is quite good at offensive drone tech. I think they have, but what they are trying to do is to have their drones labeled as battle tested. So they are trying it in all the places near, all the local war zones.
Well, the Israelis, I mean, the Shield AI, which is Steve Cohen's outfit, just acquired. They just acquired Martin UAV, which is a very interesting property in drone tech. But yeah, I think you're going to start to see a lot more of the anti-drone technology proliferate, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. But those handheld EMP, kind of guns that the Brits have and others have are really, really cool at shooting these things down.
So the Taliban fighters have taken over some UN compounds in Afghanistan, searching and ransacking offices, and in one case, demanding the guards provide meals for commander and his men, according to internal UN report seen by Reuters. We have also been advised by the Taliban to remain in our compound for our safety. Okay, and then the next one is 3D printed kidneys. How close are we? at 3D printing kidneys. Since science fiction or science fact, we take a look at the future of human organ transplanting through 3D printing. I just tweeted that one out to the Tech News Twitter account, and then Heyman sends in this one. Artificial intelligence can help diagnose skin cancer, but only on white skin. A new image-based AI tool can suggest clinical next steps for melanoma, but for darker skin patients, equal outcomes are lacking.
Well, we obviously have to ban it until it's consistent, right? I mean, can't have those white people not have skin cancer.
This one from Katarina, the novel hormone called irisin has the ability to drive the cognitive benefits of exercise and therefore holds great promise for treating cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. Irisin, a hormone secreted by muscles during exercise, improved cognitive function and lowered levels of inflammation in mouse models.
So Legally Blonde was right.
And the next one,
only the women got it.
Let's see here. This brain organoids are being made in a lab with stem cells, and these brain organoids with complex neural activity are being developed. Newly developed brain organoids grown from stem cells showed organized waves of neural activity similar to that in living human brains. And pretty soon they're going to start resisting vaccines. So I just tweeted that one out. And Flipkart Wholesale brings in credit program. Vinay, come on, we got to find better headlines than that. And what else do we got here? Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones drummer has now died at 80 years old. And thank you for that one, Dr. Fran. And that takes us to the last tweet. We did it, everybody. We reached the end. Well done. Thank you. And we will see you again mañana for another tech news around the whole fucking world.